The chevron locks echoed through Cheyenne Mountain's gate room like hammer strikes against an anvil, each metallic clang reverberating off concrete walls designed to contain the impossible. Airman First Class Riley watched the inner ring rotate with practiced familiarity. 6 years at Stargate Command had taught him that the 7th chevron's engagement meant another SG team returning from some distant world, another day of defending Earth from threats the public would never know existed. Except the iris was closed. And no teams were off-world. Unscheduled off-world activation, the technician's voice crackled through the speakers, sharp with controlled alarm. The klaxons began their urgent wail as Riley's training kicked in. He raised his P-90, joining the 24 SF personnel forming a defensive semicircle around the gate. Standard protocol, anything coming through that wormhole without proper IDC codes would hit the titanium iris at molecular level and cease to exist. Clean. Efficient. Lethal. The event horizon exploded outward in its characteristic kawoosh, that unstable vortex of energy that still made Riley's stomach clench despite hundreds of activations, before settling into the shimmering vertical pool of blue-white light. Beautiful. Deadly. Waiting. No IDC signal, confirmed the gate technician. Recommend maintaining iris. In the control room above, General George Hammond stood with arms crossed, his weathered face betraying nothing of the calculations running behind his eyes. Beside him, Major Samantha Carter leaned toward her console, blonde hair falling forward as she studied readings that made no sense whatsoever. "Sir, the energy signature is wrong," she said, fingers flying across her keyboard. "This isn't coming from any gate address in our database. The waveform pattern doesn't match Goa'uld, Takar, or any known dialing sequence. It's like something punched through the wormhole from outside the network entirely." "Receiving IDC now," the technician interrupted. Sir, it's our own code. SG-1's code. But SG-1 is standing right here." Hammond's gaze shifted to Colonel Jack O'Neill, who stood at the control room window with Daniel Jackson and Teal'c, watching the active gate with the casual readiness of men who'd seen the universe try to kill them more times than they could count. "I'm getting a real bad feeling about this," O'Neill muttered. The iris spiraled open. 6 figures materialized through the event horizon in rapid succession, stumbling forward with the disorientation of first-time gate travelers. They hit the ramp in defensive positions, trained, coordinated, ready for combat, before the wormhole collapsed behind them with its distinctive schlump of displaced air. Riley's finger tightened on his trigger as he took in the impossible scene before him. A man in red, white, and blue armor carrying a shield emblazoned with a star. A woman in black tactical gear with weapons Riley recognized, Glocks, nothing exotic, but a fighting stance that screamed elite operator. An archer in purple and black with an arrow already knocked. A massive figure in green pants and torn purple shirt, easily 7 feet tall with skin the color of jade. A blond man in archaic armor holding an ornate hammer, looking around with eyes that crackled with barely contained lightning. And at the center, a man in a red and gold mechanized suit that would make Area 51's engineers weep with envy. "Stand down. Hands where we can see them." Riley shouted, though his voice felt inadequate against whatever the hell had just come through the gate. The man in the red and gold suit raised both armored hands, repulsors glowing with gathered energy that made the air shimmer. "Easy there, G.I. Joe. We're not looking for trouble. Although judging by the rather aggressive welcome, I'm guessing interdimensional gate crashing isn't covered in your visitor policy." "O'Neill, Carter, with me," Hammond ordered, already moving toward the stairs. "Teal'c, arm the P-90s, Daniel, start thinking about what language they might speak besides English." "I think English is working just fine, General," Daniel said quietly, eyes fixed on the strangers below. The gate room had become a tableau of suspended violence, 24 weapons trained on 6 individuals who looked simultaneously confused and dangerous. The big green one shifted his weight, and Riley heard safeties clicking off across the room. The creature's eyes, impossibly intelligent, impossibly sad, tracked the movement. Nobody needs to Hulk out, the green giant rumbled, voice surprisingly gentle for something that could probably tear through the blast doors. We're not here to fight. Then explain what you are here to do, Hammond said, descending the stairs with O'Neill flanking him. The general's voice carried absolute authority, the tone of a man who'd faced Goa'uld System Lords and didn't intimidate easily. Who are you, and how did you access a United States Air Force installation? The man in the star-spangled armor lowered his shield slightly, a gesture of peace Riley recognized from his own infantry training. Military man. The stance, the discipline, this one understood command structure. My name is Steve Rogers, Captain, United States Army. He paused, seeming to recognize the absurdity of his next words. We're the Avengers. And I know this is going to sound insane, but we're not from this world. We were in New York, fighting an alien invasion, when something went wrong with an artifact we were trying to secure. There was this energy surge and then we were falling through that. He gestured to the now inactive Stargate. An alien invasion in New York, O'Neill repeated flatly. And here I thought our week was going well. Carter. Major Carter had her tablet out, already analyzing data. Sir, the residual energy in the gate room is consistent with a massive power spike during the wormhole's formation. Something on the order of a ZPM discharge, but the signature is completely foreign. It's not Nequata-based. The Tesseract, said the man in the mechanized suit, his faceplate retracting to reveal dark eyes and a goatee. Tony Stark, the name tag on Riley's cultural memory said billionaire, genius, arms dealer, though this version wore his weapons rather than selling them. Alien artifact, roughly cube-shaped, powered by energies that make nuclear reactors look like AA batteries. We were trying to keep it away from a hostile force when what did Captain Patriotic call it? Your gate apparently decided to yank us into its cosmic carpool. Tesseract, Daniel said, pushing his glasses up his nose with academic excitement completely inappropriate to the armed standoff. From the Greek tessera, meaning four. A four-dimensional analog of a cube. In theoretical physics, a hypercube. You're saying you had a four-dimensional energy source that interacted with the Stargate? I'm saying we had a glowing blue cube of "don't touch this" that exploded in our faces, Stark replied. And now we're in a mountain bunker with more guns than a NRA convention, talking to people who apparently think wormholes are just another Tuesday. So how about we skip the part where you dissect us and jump straight to comparing notes on impossible technology? Lower your weapons, Hammond ordered. The SFs hesitated, but obeyed. But keep them ready. Colonel O'Neill, escort our guests to the briefing room. Separate interrogations. Major Carter, I want a full analysis of that energy signature. Teal'c, assist the SFs in maintaining security. Daniel, start documenting everything they say. General, the woman in black said, her accent carrying Russian inflections, we have a teammate who's a bit unstable when threatened. Perhaps a gesture of good faith would prevent unfortunate accidents. Her eyes flicked to the green giant, who'd gone very still. Hammond studied the creature, no, the man, and saw intelligence warring with something primal. A weapon trying very hard not to be won. Dr. Fraser to the gate room, Hammond spoke into his radio. We're going to need medical assessment. Non-threatening approach. He addressed the green man directly. Are you injured? No, sir. The rumble carried respect. Another one who understood military courtesy. But I've been through enough labs to know where this usually goes. I'd appreciate it if the nice doctor kept the needles to a minimum. I'll see what I can do, Hammond said. Then, to the room, stand down to condition 2. We're treating these people as potential allies until proven otherwise. But if anyone makes a move I don't like, this mountain has 40 levels of security between you and daylight. Are we clear? The one called Rogers nodded. Crystal clear, General. We're not your enemies. Then let's find out who you are, Hammond replied. And what the hell you brought into my facility? As the SFs began the careful process of escorting the Avengers toward the briefing levels, Riley caught sight of the blonde man with the hammer staring at the Stargate with something like recognition. When Thor, because what else could you call someone who looked like that? Spoke, his voice carried the weight of distant thunder. This is Midgard, yes. But the Bifrost did not bring us here. This gate, it tastes of Asgard craft, but wrong. Different. His eyes found Hammond. I would speak with your wisest scholars. I believe our arrival was not accident, but design. And if the Tesseract has followed us to this realm, then darkness comes with it. O'Neill leaned toward Hammond. Sir, permission to state for the record that I really don't like where this is going. Noted, Colonel, Hammond said. But something tells me we're going to need all the help we can get. The Stargate stood silent in its cradle, ancient and patient. Somewhere in the galaxy, an alarm had been triggered. Somewhere, eyes that had plotted for millennia turned toward Earth with renewed interest. And in the briefing room of Stargate Command, Earth's defenders were about to meet heroes from a world that didn't know the gates existed. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. The blast doors sealed with hydraulic finality. The real interrogation was about to begin. The briefing room on level 19 had hosted first contact scenarios before, Teal'c's defection, the Takar alliance, even the Asgard's initial warnings about the Goa'uld, but never had General Hammond faced 6 individuals who simultaneously represented Earth's best hope and its most dangerous unknown variable. The conference table seemed inadequate for the moment, a simple piece of Air Force furniture trying to contain something much larger than itself. Hammond had separated them initially, standard interrogation protocol, but Rogers had politely insisted the team stay together. Something about trust and accountability. The captain's tone had been respectful but immovable, the voice of a man who'd commanded soldiers in circumstances Hammond could only imagine. So now all 6 sat on one side of the table while SG-1 occupied the other, creating a division that felt both necessary and deeply wrong. Teal'c stood at parade rest near the door, his staff weapon conspicuously absent but his presence no less imposing. The Jaffa's gold emblem, the mark of Apophis he still bore despite his rebellion, caught the fluorescent light as his dark eyes assessed each Avenger with the tactical precision of a warrior who'd spent a century evaluating threats. Let's start simple, Hammond said, folding his hands on the table. Captain Rogers. You claim to be from another world, yet you speak perfect English and identify yourself as United States Army. Explain. Steve Rogers sat with his spine straight, shield leaning against his chair within easy reach. Even in this impossible situation, the man radiated a peculiar combination of humility and absolute certainty. Same Earth, General. Advanced technology, enhanced individuals, and yes, aliens. But we don't have a network of wormholes connecting us to thousands of planets. Your world has no Stargate, Daniel said, leaning forward with barely contained excitement. But it does have the Tesseract. Which means some form of ancient technology exists in your reality, just different. The ancients seeded multiple realities. Or the Tesseract predates even them. Dial it back, Daniel, O'Neill interjected. We're still on the part where these folks claim to be from Dimension X and expect us to just roll with it. Actually, Colonel, the energy readings support their claim, Carter said, her laptop open and displaying data streams that made her frown with the particular intensity she reserved for physics that shouldn't exist. The residual signatures in the gate room show quantum entanglement patterns consistent with cross-dimensional breach. The Stargate network operates on the principle that wormholes connect points in spacetime, but if sufficient energy were applied, energy on the scale of what Dr. Banner described, it could theoretically create a bridge between parallel realities. Bruce Banner, who'd been sitting very still with his hands visible on the table, managed a tight smile. You have someone who actually understands quantum mechanics. I'm genuinely impressed. Most military installations I've visited tend to treat theoretical physics as something between voodoo and weapons development. We're a bit more open-minded here, Carter replied. We've encountered time dilation, parallel dimensions, and reality-altering technology. Your arrival is unusual, but not impossible. See, this is what I've been saying, Tony Stark announced, his armor having retracted enough to reveal the arc reactor glowing through his shirt. You people have been playing with cosmic forces, and nobody thought to publish. No papers. No peer review. I've got 3 PhDs and I've never heard of a functional Einstein-Rosen bridge network using fixed spatial coordinates. This is Nobel Prize-level work, and you're treating it like classified janitorial procedures. O'Neill pointed at Stark. I like him. He's annoying, but in a way I can respect. The Stargate program is classified above top secret, Hammond said firmly. The public knowledge of alien life, hostile species with technology centuries beyond ours, and the existential threats we face daily would cause worldwide panic. We operate in secret because we must. Secrets, Natasha Romanoff said quietly. She'd been silent until now, her green eyes tracking every exit, every weapon, every micro-expression around the table. I understand operational security, General. I've built careers on it. But you're not just hiding technology, you're hiding an entire galaxy of civilizations. That suggests either incredible discipline or incredible danger. Both, Teal'c rumbled from his position by the door. The Goa'uld have enslaved countless worlds, claiming divinity and breeding worship through fear. They possess weapons capable of sterilizing planets, ships that blot out suns, and armies numbering in the millions. The Tauri, your people, Captain Rogers, have survived thus far through cunning, alliance, and the courage of warriors like SG-1. But we are young in this galaxy. Vulnerable. Thor Odinson had been studying Teal'c with increasing fascination. Now he spoke, his voice carrying harmonics that made the water glasses on the table vibrate slightly. You bear the mark of a false god. Apophis, the serpent. Yet you speak of Goa'uld as enemy, not master. You are rebel, yes. One who has seen through the lies of those who claim dominion over mortals. I am Jaffa, Teal'c replied, meeting Thor's gaze without flinching. I was first primed to Apophis, his greatest warrior, until I learned the truth, the Goa'uld are not gods but parasites. Snakes that burrow into human hosts and twist entire civilizations into slavery. I chose freedom. I chose to fight. Then we are kin in purpose, if not in blood, Thor said, respect evident in his tone. In my realm, I am Prince of Asgard, son of Odin, wielder of Mjolnir. I have fought false kings and would-be tyrants across 9 realms. These Goa'uld you describe, they sound very much like enemies worth facing. About that, O'Neill interjected. Thor. Your name is Thor. Guy with the hammer, controls lightning, claims to be an actual god. I make no claim, Thor replied calmly. I simply am. Right. Here's the thing, we know the Asgard. Small gray guys, big eyes, really advanced technology. They protect certain planets from the Goa'uld through a treaty. They're definitely not, O'Neill gestured vaguely at Thor's considerable frame. Whatever you are. Daniel was practically vibrating with academic energy. The Asgard took their name from Norse mythology because ancient humans encountered them and incorporated them into cultural narratives. But in your reality, Thor, the mythology is. What? Literal? You're actually the figure from the sagas? The sagas are histories, however embellished, Thor acknowledged. But I confess confusion. You speak of Asgard as though it were populated by beings unlike myself. In my realm, Asgardians are as I am, warriors, scholars, protectors of the 9 realms. We are long-lived and powerful, but we are not gods, despite what mortals believe. We bleed. We die. We simply do so over much longer spans than humans. Well, this isn't awkward at all, Stark muttered. We've got competing Asgards, dimensional displacement, and what I'm going to go ahead and call a really aggressive welcoming committee. General, I don't suppose you've got a tech lab around here. Because my suit took some damage in transit, and if we're stuck in your X-Files mountain fortress, I'd like to at least run diagnostics. Hammond studied Stark with the expression of a man deciding whether he was dealing with an asset or a security nightmare. Mr. Stark. Dr. Stark, if we're being technical about the PhDs. Dr. Stark, Hammond continued with the patience of a career military officer, your technology is unlike anything in our database. Before we allow you access to our facilities, I need to understand what you're capable of. That suit, it's powered by what, exactly? Tony tapped the arc reactor in his chest. This little beauty is a miniaturized arc reactor, self-sustaining clean energy based on a new element I synthesized. Outputs about 3 gigajoules per second, powers the suit's flight systems, repulsors, and defensive capabilities. It's also keeping shrapnel from migrating into my heart, so I'm kind of attached to it. Literally. Carter's eyes had gone wide. 3 gigajoules per second from a device that size? That's comparable to an Aquata generator operating at peak efficiency. What's your power source? What element? Trade secret, Tony replied. Though given that I'm in a parallel dimension and my patent lawyers definitely don't have jurisdiction here, I suppose I could be persuaded to compare notes. You mentioned Naquata. Some kind of exotic matter. A mineral found throughout this galaxy, Carter explained, unable to help herself. Superconductor, massive energy storage capacity, forms the basis of Goa'uld technology and is present in the Stargates themselves. We've been working on incorporating it into our own systems, but the engineering challenges are major, Hammond interrupted gently. Perhaps we should establish whether our guests are staying before we start sharing classified research. About that, Clint Barton said, speaking for the first time. The Archer had been doing his own assessment, Riley suspected, sight lines, defensive positions, threat evaluation. We didn't exactly plan this field trip. Our priority is getting home. Our world is under attack, and we left in the middle of a battle. People are dying while we sit here having interdimensional coffee talk. The weight of that statement settled over the room. These weren't explorers or refugees, they were soldiers yanked from active combat, leaving their people to face an invasion alone. The Tesseract, Rogers said quietly. It's the key, isn't it? Tony, you said it interacted with the Stargate. If we can locate it, maybe we can reverse what happened. Create another bridge. Big if, Cap, Tony replied. The energy output required to punch through dimensional barriers. We're talking cosmic-level forces. And that's assuming the Tesseract survived the transit intact and didn't, say, materialize inside a mountain or at the bottom of an ocean. Or in the hands of someone who knows how to use it, Natasha added darkly. Hammond exchanged glances with O'Neill, a silent conversation born from years of command decisions. Major Carter, what are the odds of detecting this Tesseract if it's somewhere on Earth? If it's giving off energy signatures similar to what we detected during their arrival, we could modify our satellite network to scan for quantum anomalies. But General, if this artifact is as powerful as they claim, then every sensor-equipped ship in orbit probably noticed its arrival, O'Neill finished. Which means the Goa'uld knows something interesting just showed up on Earth. Great. Just great. Bruce Banner raised a hand slightly, the gesture almost apologetic. I should mention. The Tesseract's energy signature is distinctive. Where we come from, it attracted attention from hostile forces across the galaxy. If this universe operates on similar principles, you're right to be concerned about detection. The other, Thor said grimly. Thanos. The Chitauri army. They sought the Tesseract for its power, to open portals and conquer realms. If such darkness exists in this reality. It does, Teal'c confirmed. The Goa'uld would covet such power absolutely. And there is one among them who would stop at nothing to possess it, Anubis, who has returned from exile with knowledge of the ancients themselves. He seeks weapons, artifacts, anything to elevate himself above the other system lords. A device capable of bridging realities would make him unstoppable. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Okay, Stark said into the silence. New plan. We help you find the Tesseract before bad guy McGee gets his hands on it, you help us figure out how to get home, everybody wins. I'm fantastic at quid pro quo arrangements. It's not that simple, Hammond replied. You're asking us to trust 6 unknown individuals with access to classified facilities, advanced technology, and operational intelligence. For all we know, you could be Goa'uld infiltrators using an elaborate cover story. General Hammond, Roger said, and something in his voice made everyone listen. I understand your caution. In your position, I'd be just as careful. But sir, we're not your enemies. We're soldiers who fight to protect our people, just like you do. If this Tesseract has fallen into hostile hands, then our goals align, secure it, prevent catastrophe, and find a way to set things right. You don't have to trust us completely. But give us a chance to prove ourselves. Hammond studied the captain for a long moment. Steve Rogers looked back with eyes that had seen too much war but hadn't lost their idealism. It was a look Hammond recognized, he'd seen it in young lieutenants who became colonels, in warriors who never stopped believing that the fight mattered. Colonel O'Neill, Hammond said finally. Your assessment? Jack leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying the Avengers with the cynical eye of a man who'd been betrayed, mind-controlled, and generally abused by the universe too many times to count. But he'd also learned to recognize genuine people in a galaxy of liars. They're either telling the truth, O'Neill said slowly, or they're the most elaborate Goa'uld psychological operation in history. My gut says truth. My paranoia says we watch them like hawks. Compromise, they work with us under direct supervision, no unsupervised access, and at the first sign of snake eyes or world domination speeches, we introduce them to our very effective containment protocols. I can work with that, Natasha said. We're used to being the most dangerous people in the room. Nice to meet peers. Hammond made his decision. Very well. Probationary alliance, effective immediately. Dr. Fraser will conduct medical examinations, non-invasive, Dr. Banner, but necessary for everyone's safety. Major Carter will work with Dr. Stark on locating the Tesseract. Captain Rogers, you and Colonel O'Neill will coordinate security protocols. The rest of you will be briefed on Goa'uld capabilities and current threat assessments. We have approximately 72 hours before the next scheduled System Lords Summit, where intelligence suggests Anubis will make his move for greater power. If the Tesseract has attracted his attention, that timeline just became critical. 72 hours, Clint said. I've worked with less. As have we all, Teal'c agreed. Welcome to the war for Earth's survival, Avengers. Indeed, it is a battle worthy of warriors. Thor raised his hammer slightly, a gesture of salute. Then let us find this Tesseract and face these false gods together. I would very much like to meet these Goa'uld. They sound like they need a lesson in humility. O'Neill grinned despite himself. Oh, you're going to fit right in. The armory on level 28 smelled of gun oil and quiet efficiency, a scent Steve Rogers recognized from 100 different military bases across a lifetime of service. Except this armory stored weapons that would have seemed like pure fantasy in 1945, staff weapons with crystalline power cores, strange pistols with double triggers, and equipment marked with symbols Steve couldn't begin to decipher. He stood beside Colonel O'Neill while an SF tech fitted him with what they called a TAC vest, watching Tony argue with Major Carter 3 stations down about Naquata refinement processes. Your tech guy always this enthusiastic? O'Neill asked, checking the magazine on AP90 with practiced ease. Tony's not enthusiastic, Steve replied. He's compulsive. Give him a problem to solve and he'll ignore sleep, food, and common sense until he cracks it. Usually while making everyone around him crazy. Sounds familiar. O'Neill glanced toward the briefing area where Daniel Jackson was already buried in books, cross-referencing ancient texts with Thor's descriptions of Asgardian technology. Daniel does the same thing with languages and archaeology. Difference is, your guy's inventions occasionally explode in productive ways. Daniel's just give us headaches. Steve smiled despite the tension coiled in his chest. 3 hours in this facility and he still felt like he'd fallen through the looking glass, a galaxy of humans enslaved by parasitic aliens, technology millions of years old treated as standard equipment, and military protocols governing exploration of literal alien worlds. The scale of it dwarfed even Hydra's ambitions. So, O'Neill continued, his tone carefully casual, super soldier serum. The 40s. You're what? Chronologically about 90 years old, give or take. Give or take 70 years on ice, Steve confirmed. He'd learned there was no point hiding the truth from people who dealt with time dilation and cryogenic stasis as occupational hazards. Project Rebirth, 1943. Dr. Erskine's formula enhanced everything: strength, speed, healing, mental processing. Then I went into the Arctic in 1945 and woke up in 2011. My world's changed. I'm still adjusting. O'Neill was quiet for a moment, and Steve recognized the look of a soldier calculating threat assessments behind casual conversation. And the shield? Vibranium, Carter mentioned after scanning it. Absorbs kinetic energy, basically indestructible. Strongest metal on Earth. In my Earth, anyway. Steve ran his hand along the shield's edge, the familiar way to comfort in this strange place. Howard Stark made it. Tony's father. It saved my life more times than I can count. Speaking of saving lives, O'Neill said, his voice dropping to command-level seriousness, I need to know what you and your people can actually do in the field. Tomorrow morning, we're dating to P3X-797, a Jaffa-controlled planet where we've got intelligence about Goa'uld troop movements. Standard recon mission, minimal contact expected. Hammond's cleared you to tag along, see how we operate, show us what you're capable of. Think your team's ready for alien warfare? Steve met O'Neill's eyes directly. Colonel, we just fought an army of cybernetic aliens in downtown Manhattan. Natasha and Clint are the best operators I've ever worked with. Tony's suit makes him a one-man air force. Thor's, well, you've met Thor. And Bruce. The big green rage monster, O'Neill finished. Yeah, about that. Dr. Fraser's report is fascinating reading. 7 PhDs, world-class physicist, turns into an engine of destruction when angry. How do we keep him from hulking out in a confined space? Say, inside an alien pyramid surrounded by hostiles. You don't make him angry, Steve said simply. Bruce has more control than people think. He's learned to manage it, channel it. But if things go completely sideways and we need overwhelming force, the Hulk is. A tactical nuclear option, O'Neill interrupted. Yeah, I got that. Here's my concern, Captain. The Goa'uld use humans as hosts. Living people with snake parasites controlling their bodies. When we fight them, we're trying to kill the snake without killing the host. Precision work. The Hulk doesn't strike me as precision. The weight of that settled over Steve like cold water. In New York, the Chitauri had been clearly alien, clearly hostile. No moral ambiguity. But fighting possessed humans, trying to free them rather than kill them. I understand, Steve said quietly. We'll adapt. We always do. Across the armory, Tony had apparently won whatever argument he'd been having with Carter, because she was now pulling up holographic displays, actual holographic displays, not projections but three-dimensional light constructs, showing energy patterns that made Tony's eyes light up with scientific greed. The Naquadah reactor interfaces directly with ancient technology, Carter explained, manipulating the display with hand gestures. The ancients built the Stargates using Naquadah as a superconductor, but their real breakthrough was in the control crystals. They found a way to program matter at the quantum level, creating computational systems that make our best processors look like abacuses. Quantum crystalline computing, Tony breathed. I theorized about this, but the energy requirements to maintain coherent quantum states at room temperature, you're telling me this has been solved technology for millions of years? 10 million, give or take, Carter said with barely suppressed excitement. Dr. Stark, if we could integrate your arc reactor design with our Naquadah generators, we might be able to power systems that currently require a ZPM. A zero-point module, basically a power source that draws energy from vacuum fluctuations in subspace. The ancients had them. We have exactly 3, and they're not replaceable with current technology. Show me the specifications, Tony demanded. And please tell me you have a fabrication lab, because I'm having about 15 breakthrough ideas per minute and I need to build something before my brain explodes. Clint Barton materialized beside Steve with the unsettling quiet of a trained archer, making even O'Neill twitch slightly. She teaching him classified ancient secrets, or is this just foreplay for genius engineers? Both, probably, Steve replied. You get fitted with gear. Clint patted the P-90 slung across his chest, then the combat knife strapped to his thigh, supplementing his bow and quiver. Standard loadout plus alien weapons that apparently shoot energy bolts instead of bullets. Teal'c gave me a demonstration with something called a staff weapon. It's intimidating but slow. I'll stick with my bow for precision work and use the P-90 for suppressive fire. You comfortable with the mission profile? Steve asked. We're walking into a hostile alien planet tomorrow with people we've known for less than a day. Cap, I've run Black Ops in 13 countries with handlers I never met and intel from sources I never trusted, Clint said. At least these folks are honest about not trusting us yet. O'Neill's good people, I can see it in how his team operates. They've got the kind of synchronization you only get from surviving impossible odds together. Steve had noticed the same thing. SG-1 moved like a single organism, O'Neill's tactical decisions, Carter's technical solutions, Daniel's cultural insights, and Teal'c's combat expertise flowing together with the seamless efficiency of a championship team. It reminded him of the Howling Commandos, of what the Avengers were still learning to become. Rogers, Barton, O'Neill called out. Shooting range, now. I want to see what you can do with weapons that don't require arrows or patriotic color schemes. The range occupied a reinforced section of level 30, with targets set at various distances and environmental simulators that could replicate everything from desert heat to sub-zero cold. Teal'c was already there with Natasha, demonstrating the staff weapon with the patient precision of a master teaching fundamentals. The staff weapon is designed for intimidation as much as lethality, Teal'c explained, the golden serpent helm of a Jaffa warrior resting on the bench beside him. Goa'uld prefer their servants to inspire terror. Thus, the weapon is powerful but imprecise. Observe. He fired. The energy bolt scorched the air, crackling with heat and light as it streaked downrange and obliterated the target in a shower of sparks. The sound alone, a deep, resonant hum, was designed to make enemies flee. Impressive, Natasha said, her Russian accent more pronounced when she concentrated. But for actual combat, I prefer reliability over theatrics. She raised the P-90 she'd been fitted with and put 3 controlled bursts into 3 separate targets, each burst tight and centered. This I understand. Point, shoot, enemy stops moving. Indeed, Teal'c agreed with something that might have been approval. You have warrior's instincts, Natasha Romanoff. Your efficiency reminds me of Bratak, my mentor. He always said, a staff weapon makes you look dangerous. A precise weapon makes you be dangerous. Steve took position at the firing line with the P-90, feeling its weight and balance. Different from the Thompson submachine guns of his era, lighter and more controlled. He fired a test burst, adjusted for the recoil characteristics, then methodically engaged targets with the muscle memory of countless training hours. Not bad, O'Neill observed. For a guy who's technically a senior citizen. I heal fast, Steve replied. Lets me train harder, longer. Muscle memory compounds over time. Let me guess, you could do this all day. Steve smiled. I've been told I have a catchphrase problem. Movement in his peripheral vision made Steve turn. Bruce Banner stood in the doorway, looking profoundly uncomfortable surrounded by weapons and warriors. The physicist wore borrowed BDUs that didn't quite fit, his hands shoved in his pockets like a teenager trying to disappear. Dr. Banner, Teal'c said, acknowledging him with a slight bow. You honor us with your presence. I'm not really the gun range type, Bruce said awkwardly. More of a, avoid conflict until the other guy shows up, kind of guy. The other guy being the Hulk, O'Neill said, not unkindly. Look, Doc, I get it. You're the brain, not the brawn. But tomorrow we're going through that gate, and I need to know, if things go sideways and you go green, is he going to recognize friendly forces or just start smashing indiscriminately? Bruce's expression went carefully neutral, the look of a man who'd answered this question too many times, always with people ready to lock him up for the wrong answer. The Hulk isn't mindless. He's angry, aggressive, but he can distinguish threats from innocence. He protected civilians in New York. He fought alongside us. He's not just destruction. He's you, Steve said quietly. Another part of you. A part I'm still learning to live with, Bruce admitted. But Colonel O'Neill, I promise you, if I transform, the Hulk will fight with you, not against you. He's saved my team more times than I can count. He'll save yours too, if it comes to that. Teal'c studied Bruce with the intensity of a warrior recognizing another. You carry great burden, Dr. Banner. Power you did not choose, that isolates you from others. I understand this more than you know. For a century, I carried a Goa'uld symbiote in my pouch, a parasite that gave me strength and life while marking me as servant to false gods. I lived with something inside me that was both part of me and separate. When I chose freedom, I chose to make that burden into a weapon against tyranny. The symbiote's gone now? Bruce asked. Replaced with tretinoin, a drug that sustains my immune system, Teal'c confirmed. I am free of the symbiote, but the choice came with sacrifice. Freedom always does. Yet I would make the same choice again, every time. Perhaps you, too, will find a way to make peace with your burden. To make it not a curse, but a strength. Bruce was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Maybe. I appreciate the perspective. The door opened and Thor strode in, Mjolnir resting casually on his shoulder, followed by Daniel Jackson looking both academically excited and slightly terrified. Friends. Thor boomed. Dr. Jackson has been explaining your galactic situation, and I must say, these Goa'uld sound like the worst kind of tyrants, powerful enough to be dangerous, clever enough to be cruel, yet ultimately hollow. False gods playing at divinity while true worth comes from character and deed. I am eager to face them in battle. You might get your chance tomorrow, O'Neill said. We're taking you on a field trip. Alien planet, possible hostiles, definite opportunity to hit things with your hammer. Think you can follow orders and not start Ragnarok? Thor's expression became surprisingly serious. Colonel O'Neill, I have fought in wars that spanned realms. I have led armies and followed the commands of wiser strategists. I know the difference between glorious individual combat and coordinated military action. If you lead this mission, I will follow your orders as I would my own captain's. You have my oath. Works for me, O'Neill said. Just, maybe don't call down lightning inside a stone pyramid. These places tend to collapse when you get creative with the architecture. I shall exercise restraint, Thor promised solemnly, though his eyes sparkled with barely contained eagerness. Daniel pushed his glasses up, looking between Thor and Teal'c. This is fascinating. Thor, you mentioned the 9 realms. In our mythology, that's Asgard, Midgard, Jotunheim, and 6 others. But in our reality, those are just stories. Yet you're saying in your dimension, they're actual places connected by the Bifrost, a rainbow bridge. Meanwhile, we have the Stargate network connecting thousands of worlds. 2 different technologies, same goal, facilitating travel between worlds. The convergent evolution implications alone. Daniel, O'Neill interrupted. Breathing. Remember breathing. Sorry, Daniel said, not sounding sorry at all. But Jack, this is unprecedented data on parallel dimensional development. If I could just. Tomorrow, O'Neill said firmly. Tonight, everyone gets rest. We gate out at 0600 hours. That's 6 a.m. for those of you not fluent in military time. Mission briefing at 0530. SFs will escort you to assigned quarters. Get some sleep. Trust me, you'll need it. As they filed out of the range, Steve found himself walking beside Teal'c. The Jaffa moved with the controlled grace of a lifetime warrior, and Steve recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood duty, sacrifice, and the weight of leadership. Teal'c, Steve said. Tomorrow, when we go through that gate, what should we expect? The Jaffa considered the question with the gravity it deserved. Expect to see slavery, Captain Rogers. Expect to see humans bowing before false gods, offering worship to parasites who claim divine right. Expect to feel rage at the injustice, and helplessness at the scale of it. Billions enslaved across thousands of worlds, and we can free only a few at a time. It is the war we fight, one planet, one system, one liberated soul at a time. Sounds familiar, Steve said quietly. Different war, same fight. Freedom versus tyranny. Indeed, Teal'c agreed. And tomorrow, you will understand why this fight matters. Why we risk everything, every day, stepping through that gate into the unknown. Because on the other side are people who need champions. People who need hope. Steve nodded, feeling the familiar weight settle onto his shoulders, the responsibility of being a symbol, a soldier, a man out of time fighting for a future worth protecting. Different galaxy, different century, but some things never changed. The war was always the same. Only the enemies wore different faces. The Stargate activated at precisely 0600 hours, each chevron locking with mechanical precision that Steve found oddly reassuring. Military efficiency transcended dimensions, apparently. He stood in full tactical gear, BDU, TAC vest, P90, combat knife, and his shield mag locked to his back, watching the event horizon stabilize into that impossible vertical pool of shimmering energy. Still gets me every time, Clint muttered beside him, arrow knocked but not drawn. We've got aliens in New York, but you folks have a doorway to anywhere in the galaxy. That's just showing off. Wait until you actually step through, O'Neill said, checking his own P91 final time. The first trip is always memorable. Try not to throw up in front of the Jaffa. They judge. SG-1 stood ready, O'Neill leading, Carter with her scientific equipment and sidearm, Daniel looking simultaneously nervous and excited with his translation database, and Teal'c in full Jaffa armor. The serpent helm, the gold emblem, the staff weapon held with casual deadliness. Behind them, the Avengers represented Earth's mightiest in a different way, Steve's tactical leadership, Natasha's lethal efficiency, Clint's precision, Tony's armored versatility, Bruce's controlled potential, and Thor's barely contained divine power. 2 SG teams. 1 mission. Infinite ways it could go wrong. P3X 797, Carter briefed, her voice carrying the clipped efficiency of mission protocols. Third planet, binary star system, Designation, Sharon, for operational purposes. MALP telemetry shows a standard Goa'uld occupation, pyramid structure, agricultural villages, human population estimated at 5,000. No apparent space-based defenses, but we've detected increased HOTAC traffic in the system. Intelligence suggests Apophis is consolidating forces here, possibly as a staging ground for something larger. Our mission, O'Neill continued, is recon only. We observe, we document, we do not engage unless absolutely necessary. These people are enslaved, and blowing up their pyramid won't free them, it'll just bring a mothership down on their heads. Clear. Crystal, Steve confirmed. The rest of the Avengers nodded, though Thor's grip on Mjolnir suggested the god was hoping for, absolutely necessary, to happen sooner rather than later. One more thing, Hammond said from the control room above. Avengers, you're operating under SG-1's authority. Colonel O'Neill's word is law. If he says abort, you abort. If he says run, you run. These are not suggestions. Understood? Understood, General, Steve replied, his military training overriding any instinct to debate command structure. They were guests here, untested in this galaxy's conflicts. Following orders wasn't surrender, it was smart tactics. SG-1, you have a go, Hammond announced. Bring them back, Colonel. Yes, sir, O'Neill said. Then, to the assembled teams. Let's take a walk. The event horizon felt like plunging into ice, water and fire simultaneously, a sensation of utter wrongness that lasted exactly 1 second before Steve materialized on the other side, stumbling slightly as his enhanced physiology adjusted to instantaneous teleportation across light-years of space. Alien sunlight hit him first, binary stars casting double shadows across a landscape that was simultaneously familiar and utterly wrong. The sky shaded purple at the horizon. The grass analog was teal rather than green. The air tasted of copper and ozone, and the gravity felt just slightly lighter than Earth normal. Holy, Clint caught himself, professionalism overriding amazement. We're really on another planet. P3X-797, Carter confirmed, checking her equipment. Gate travel successful, no apparent complications. Welcome to the galaxy, Avengers. Natasha had her P90 up and scanning, operating on pure tactical instinct despite the impossible reality of standing on an alien world. Contact? Negative, Teal'c reported, his staff weapon sweeping the tree line. The Stargate is positioned 3 kilometers from the primary settlement, standard Goa'uld placement to prevent unauthorized access. We should not encounter patrols this far out unless we have been specifically detected. Thor stood perfectly still, Mjolnir loose in his grip, his eyes tracking across the alien sky with an expression Steve couldn't quite read. 2 suns, the god said quietly. Binary stars, locked in eternal dance. In Asgard, we have songs about such systems, they're considered sacred, symbolic of balance between opposing forces. To see one with my own eyes. Focus, O'Neill said, not unkindly. We can appreciate the cosmic wonder after we make sure nothing's trying to kill us. Standard patrol formation, Teal'c on point, Carter covering our 6, Daniel in the middle where the civilians belong. I'm not a civilian, Daniel protested automatically. And our new friend stays central until we see how they handle alien terrain. Move out. They moved through the forest with tactical precision, Steve's enhanced senses cataloging everything. The bioluminescent fungi growing on tree bark, the distant calls of something that definitely wasn't a bird, the way the shadows shifted wrong because of the twin stars. This wasn't just another planet, it was an entire ecosystem, evolved separately from Earth yet producing remarkably similar results. Parallel evolution on a galactic scale. Dr. Jackson, Bruce said quietly, keeping pace beside the archaeologist, you mentioned these people are enslaved by the Goa'uld. What does that actually mean? Are they prisoners? Forced labor? Daniel's expression went grim. Worse. Religious indoctrination spanning generations. The Goa'uld arrive, claim to be gods from their people's mythology, Ra, Apophis, whatever fits the local culture, and demand worship. They have the technology to back it up. Staff weapons, force fields, ribbon devices that can kill with a gesture. To Bronze Age or Iron Age humans, they are gods. So the people worship, they obey, and their children are raised believing slavery is divine order. That's, Bruce's hands clenched. That's monstrous. It's cultural genocide masked as religion. Yes, Daniel said simply. And it's been happening for thousands of years across hundreds of worlds. We fight it where we can, but we're 12 SG teams against a galactic empire. Sometimes the best we can do is plant seeds of doubt and hope they grow. Tony's armor servos whirred softly as he scanned the environment, his HUD feeding him atmospheric data, mineral compositions, electromagnetic readings. I'm detecting Naquadah signatures ahead, he reported. Concentrated deposits, probably refined. Your pyramid? Probably, Carter confirmed, checking her own scanner. Goa'uld pyramids serve as landing platforms for Teal'c cargo ships and symbols of divine authority. They're built from Naquadah reinforced stone, designed to last millennia with minimal maintenance. And to look really impressive when the fake gods show up in their flying golden triangles, O'Neill added. Nothing says, worship me, like landing a spaceship on top of a building taller than anything the locals can construct. They crested a rise and Steve's breath caught despite himself. The valley below held a settlement that could have been lifted from ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, mud brick buildings, agricultural terraces, irrigation channels fed by a river that sparkled wrong in the alien sunlight. But dominating everything was the pyramid, a massive structure of dark stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. At its peak, golden symbols glowed with inner fire, and the air around it shimmered with barely visible energy fields. Goa'uld Pyramid, textbook design, Teal'c confirmed. Force field active, which suggests a high-ranking underlord is in residence. The population appears subdued, no festivals, no public gatherings. They fear something. Through his scope, Steve could see people moving through the village below. Human people, wearing simple clothing, going about daily tasks with the mechanical efficiency of routine. Children played in the streets. Farmers tended crops. It looked almost peaceful, except for the armored figures standing guard at key intersections, Jaffa warriors, their staff weapons and golden armor marking them as servants of false gods. How many Jaffa? Natasha asked, her tone purely professional. Initial count suggests 30 to 40 invisible positions, Teal'c replied. Standard occupation force. The Hawkeye in orbit will have thousands more, but they remain in space unless rebellion or attack threatens Goa'uld authority. And the people just, accept this? Clint said, disgust evident in his voice. They don't fight back. With what? Daniel replied quietly. Bronze weapons against energy staffs. Faith against demonstrable power. The Goa'uld have been gods to these people for so long that resistance doesn't even occur to them. It's not cowardice. It's comprehensive psychological dominance spanning generations. Thor's hand tightened on Mjolnir, lightning crackling briefly along the hammer's head before he forced it down. This is wrong. These people deserve freedom, deserve to know the truth about their false gods. And they'll get it, O'Neill said firmly. Eventually. But not today, and not by storming in like the cavalry. We've learned the hard way that liberation imposed from outside often fails. People need to choose freedom themselves, or they just trade one master for another. Steve understood the frustration in O'Neill's voice, the rage at injustice combined with the tactical reality that some battles couldn't be won by force alone. It was the same calculation he'd made 100 times during the war, watching occupied villages and knowing that a premature attack would get civilians killed. Movement, Carter said sharply. Southeast approach, multiple contacts. Through the trees came a procession that made Steve's stomach turn. 20 humans in chains, guarded by a half-dozen Jaffa, being marched toward the pyramid. The prisoners looked beaten, exhausted, their faces carrying the hollow expression of people who'd given up hope. Slave tribute, Teal'c said, his voice carefully neutral in the way that meant he was feeling everything and showing nothing. The Goa'uld demand regular offerings, usually the strongest, the most defiant, anyone who questions divine authority. They will be taken to the pyramid for interrogation, torture, or selection as new hosts. Host selection, Bruce said, horror dawning. You mean the Goa'uld parasite? They're going to burrow into the base of their skulls, take control of their bodies, and suppress their consciousness, Daniel finished, his academic tone not quite hiding his disgust. The host is still alive, aware, but trapped inside their own mind while the Goa'uld uses them like a puppet. It's the ultimate violation. Natasha's weapon came up fractionally. We can't just watch this. Stand down, O'Neill ordered, his voice hard. We take out those Jaffa, the Hatak notices. They send death gliders, kill the village as punishment for harboring rebels. We save 20, we doom 5,000. That's the math. That's unacceptable math, Steve said quietly, but he didn't raise his weapon. Because O'Neill was right, and Steve had made these same horrible calculations in the war. Sometimes the best you could do was survive to fight again. Captain Rogers speaks wisdom, Teal'c said. I have watched this scene countless times, both as participant and observer. Each time, I wanted to act. Each time, I knew that action would bring greater suffering. This is the war we fight, not in single glorious battles, but in slow, patient resistance. We document these crimes. We gather intelligence. And when the time is right, we strike with precision to free entire systems, not just 20 souls. The procession passed below their position, close enough that Steve could see individual faces. A young woman, maybe 20, walking with her head high despite the chains. An older man, whispering what might have been prayers or curses. A child, no more than 12, crying silently. Tony's faceplate was down, hiding his expression, but his voice came tight and controlled. I'm running calculations on pyramid defenses. Give me 6 hours and access to your Naquata generators, I could build a disruption device that would drop those force fields long enough for an extraction. And then what? O'Neill challenged. We extract 20 people, bring them back to Earth, and explain they can never go home because their entire planet will be glassed from orbit as an example. We've tried rescue operations, Stark. Sometimes they work. More often, they make things worse. So we do nothing, Tony said flatly. We do what we can, O'Neill corrected. We gather intel. We find weaknesses. We prepare for the day when we can act decisively. Welcome to asymmetric warfare against a galactic empire, Dr. Stark. It sucks, but it's the war we've got. Steve watched the prisoners disappear into the pyramid's shadow, each step taking them closer to a fate he couldn't prevent, and felt the familiar weight of command decisions settling onto his shoulders. During the war, he'd learned that being Captain America meant making choices between bad options and worse ones. Being a leader meant living with those choices afterward. Colonel O'Neill's right, Steve said quietly. We can't save them today. But we remember them. We document this. And we use it to build the case for when we can act. A sound cut through the tension, a deep, resonant horn blast that echoed across the valley. The villagers below immediately stopped what they were doing and began moving toward the pyramid, forming orderly lines with the practiced efficiency of long routine. Assembly call, Teal'c identified. The Goa'uld summons his subjects for pronouncement or demonstration. This is unusual, such gatherings typically occur only for major events or executions. Define major events, Clint said warily. Before Teal'c could answer, the air above the pyramid shimmered and split, reality tearing open like fabric as a ring transport beam materialized a figure at the pyramid's apex. Even at this distance, Steve could see the golden armor, the ornate staff weapon, the theatrical costume designed to invoke awe and terror. The Goa'uld spoke, his voice amplified by technology to boom across the valley like thunder, "People of Sharon. Your god Apophis speaks. Kneel before your Lord and receive his divine word." As one, 5,000 people dropped to their knees, foreheads touching dirt, absolute submission radiating from every prostrate form. "That's Apophis?" Bruce whispered. "The Serpent God. One of the major system lords." "No," Teal'c said, his tone sharpening. "That armor, that is not Apophis. The voice modulation is wrong, the symbology incorrect. That is an underlord, a lesser Goa'uld pretending to be Apophis to maintain control." The false Apophis continued his pronouncement, "A great darkness approaches. An artifact of immense power has fallen from the heavens, and my divine wisdom has located it within this system. Soon, I shall claim this treasure and ascend to power beyond your comprehension. Rejoice, for your God becomes greater still." Steve felt ice flood his veins. The Tesseract. He's talking about the Tesseract. "As demonstration of my magnificence," the Goa'uld continued, "I shall select from among you worthy servants to witness my glory. The tribute brought before me shall have the honor of joining with my sacred children, becoming vessels for divine will. Come forth and embrace your destiny." The 20 prisoners were forced to their feet and marched toward the pyramid's base, where a ring platform began to glow with transportation energy. "He's going to make them hosts," Daniel said, horror in his voice. "Right now, in front of everyone, as a demonstration of power." Thor's entire body crackled with barely suppressed lightning, the god's eyes literally glowing with divine fury. "I will not stand by and watch this." "Thor, stand down," Steve ordered, grabbing the god's arm. "We can't. I am Prince of Asgard." Thor's voice rang with authority that made the air vibrate. "I have watched tyrants long enough. These people deserve a champion, and I will." The crack of staff weapon fire cut him off. Below, in the village, one of the prisoners, the young woman who'd walked with her head high, had broken free from her guards and was running, sprinting toward the forest with desperate speed. The Jaffa fired, energy bolts scorching the ground around her, deliberately missing. Toying with her. Making a sport of her futile escape. "Kree," the Goa'uld's voice boomed with cruel amusement. "Let her run. Let all see the futility of defiance against divine will." The woman made it 30 meters before a staff blast took her in the back. She went down hard, and Steve heard the scream even from this distance, pain and rage and defiance all mixed together. The Jaffa dragged her back toward the pyramid, her hands leaving trails in the dirt as she clawed. Steve Rogers, who'd fought Nazis and Hydra, who'd crashed a plane into the Arctic to save millions, who'd woken up in a future that needed Captain America, made a decision. "New plan," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "We're saving those people." "Captain," O'Neill started. "Colonel, you have your orders and your mission," Steve interrupted, his tone respectful but immovable. "But I didn't come here to watch innocents suffer while we gather intelligence. Sometimes you have to stand up, even when the odds are impossible. Especially then. That's what heroes do." He looked at his team. "Avengers, we move in 60 seconds. Clint, you're Overwatch. Take out Jaffa guards on my mark. Natasha, crowd control and extraction. Tony, air support and shield disruption. Thor, you wanted to meet a false god. Now's your chance. Bruce. I'll stay back unless you need the other guy," Bruce said firmly. "But if you need him, just shout." Steve turned to O'Neill, meeting the colonel's eyes with absolute conviction. "Sir, we're doing this with or without you. But I'd rather do it with you. These people need to know that gods can bleed. And we're about to teach that lesson." For a long moment, O'Neill just stared at him. Then, slowly, a familiar grin spread across the colonel's face, the expression of a man who'd been waiting for an excuse to do exactly this. Teal'c. O'Neill said casually. Indeed, O'Neill, the Jaffa replied, staff weapon coming up. I have waited many years to defy my former master once more. It would be my honor. Carter, Daniel, you're staying here. Long-range support and emergency extraction. Jack. Daniel started. That's an order, O'Neill said. Then, to Steve, Captain Rogers, let's go ruin a false god's day. Try to keep the property damage minimal, we still have to live in this galaxy. Steve allowed himself a small smile. No promises, Colonel. And Captain America led the Avengers to war. The plan came together in 45 seconds of whispered coordination, the kind of tactical improvisation that separated good soldiers from exceptional ones. Steve had done this 100 times with the Howling Commandos, assessing terrain, identifying choke points, assigning roles based on capabilities. The fact that this time his team included a god, a rage monster on standby, and a man in a flying suit of armor just meant adjusting the variables. Clint, tree lean northeast, elevation advantage, Steve ordered, his voice calm despite adrenaline flooding his system. Suppressing fire on Jaffa positions, prioritize guards on the prisoners. Natasha, you're with me, ground approach, fast and quiet until we're not. Tony, you come in loud from the west, draw their attention and sensors. Make them think you're the main threat. Being the center of attention. I'm deeply uncomfortable with this role, Tony said, his faceplate snapping down. Jarvis, full power to repulsors and flight systems. Let's make an entrance these snakeheads won't forget. Thor, you're our hammer, Steve continued. When Tony draws their fire, you come down on that pyramid like the wrath of, well, like the wrath of you. Break their symbol of divine authority. Show these people their god can be challenged. Lightning crackled around Mjolnir as Thor's eyes blazed with barely contained power. Finally, a plan worthy of song. These Goa'uld will learn what happens when they invoke the name of gods while possessing none of their virtue. Teal'c. O'Neill said quietly. The Jaffa had removed his serpent helm, revealing his face, and the gold emblem of Apophis emblazoned on his forehead. To the Jaffa below, he would appear as one of their own, a first prime of the highest rank. I will speak to my brothers, Teal'c said simply. Words they have not heard in years of servitude. Perhaps some will remember what it means to be free. O'Neill checked his P-91 last time. I'm officially logging this as a rescue operation necessitated by immediate threat to human life. Hammond's going to have my ass for this, but it won't be the first time. We go on Captain Rogers' mark. Try not to start an intergalactic incident. Too late for that, Natasha murmured, checking her weapons with practiced efficiency. The moment we walked through that gate, we became part of this war. Might as well make it count. Steve moved to the ridge edge, shield on his arm, studying the village layout with tactical precision. 20 prisoners, 6 Jaffa guards at ground level, another dozen positioned around the pyramid, the false Apophis at the apex making his pronouncements. Roughly 40 hostiles total, with unknown reinforcements available via transport rings or orbital deployment. Impossible odds. Standard Tuesday for the Avengers. Clint, you ready? Steve subvocalized. Through his comm. Borrowed USAF equipment integrated with Stark tech in the 30 minutes Tony had been in the armory. Clint's response came calm and focused, 16 targets tagged, priority sequence established. On your word, Cap. Tony. Weapons hot, flight systems nominal, ego fully charged. Ready to be incredibly distracting. Thor. I was born ready, Captain. Let the false gods tremble. Steve took a breath, felt the familiar clarity of combat settle over him like a second skin. This wasn't the calculated warfare of modern military operations, this was the desperate heroics of impossible rescue, the kind of mission where you moved fast, hit hard, and trusted your team to do the impossible. Just like old times. Avengers, Steve said quietly. Assemble. He threw himself over the ridge. The enhanced serum turned the 40-foot drop into an controlled fall, Steve's legs absorbing the impact with barely a stumble as he hit the ground running. Natasha landed beside him half a second later, her widow's bite crackers already charging with electrical energy. They crossed the open ground in a blur of motion, years of partnership making their movements synchronized without need for communication. The first Jaffa guard died without knowing he was under attack. Clint's arrow took him through the neck gap in his armor with surgical precision. The second guard turned, raising his staff weapon, and Steve's shield left his hand in a perfect arc that caught the Jaffa in the temple with a sound like a gong, ricocheted off a wall, and returned to Steve's arm as if magnetized. Then Tony hit the pyramid. The armored Avenger came screaming out of the sky like a meteor, repulsors blazing with concentrated energy that turned the pyramid's force field incandescent. Alarms shrieked across the valley. Ancient Goa'uld warning systems detecting the impossible energy signature of arc reactor technology. Tony circled the structure at supersonic speeds, each pass firing precision strikes that tested the shield's resonance frequencies. Bad news, this shield is nice, Tony reported, banking hard to avoid a staff weapon volley from the Jaffa below. Adaptive frequency modulation, self-repairing harmonic matrix. Good news, I'm nicer. Jarvis, analyze and prepare countermeasures. The false Apophis's amplified voice boomed with rage, who dares attack a god? Jaffa. Kree. Destroy the intruder. Thunder answered him. Thor descended from the heavens like his namesake, Mjolnir trailing lightning that split the alien sky. The god hit the pyramid's apex with the force of a tactical strike, divine power meeting ancient technology in a collision that made the air itself scream. The force field flickered, stuttered, and for 3 crucial seconds, collapsed entirely. Shields down. Tony called. Window won't last, make it count. Steve was already moving, vaulting over a low wall and sliding into the crowd of villagers who'd scattered when the attack began. The prisoners were still chained together near the pyramid's base, Jaffa guards forming a protective circle around them with staff weapons raised. Natasha. Steve shouted, and she understood instantly. The Black Widow hit the Jaffa formation like a dancer performing lethal ballet, sliding under staff fire, her bite crackers discharging directly into armor gaps, dropping 2 guards before they registered the threat. Steve's shield took the third, the vibranium disc hitting with enough force to cave in the Jaffa's chest plate and send him flying backward. But there were too many. Staff weapons tracked toward them, toward the prisoners, and Steve knew with sickening certainty they couldn't reach everyone in time. Teal'c stepped into the plaza. The Jaffa warrior walked with the measured confidence of absolute authority, his staff weapon held in ceremonial position, his face carved from stone. When he spoke, his voice carried across the village with the command of a first prime addressing his warriors. Jaffa. Hold your fire. The guards hesitated, confused by the appearance of one who bore Apophis's mark with such evident rank. I am Teal'c of Teal'c, once first prime to Apophis, and I tell you this truth, the Goa'uld are false gods. His voice rang like a bell, cutting through centuries of conditioning. They are parasites. Snakes who burrow into human hosts and claim divinity through stolen bodies and advanced technology. They are no more gods than I am. And I have chosen freedom. The effect was electric. Jaffa froze, their weapons wavering, ancient certainties crumbling under the weight of impossible heresy spoken by one of their own. Lies. The false Apophis shrieked from the pyramid's peak, though Steve noticed the Goa'uld had taken cover behind a pillar when Thor arrived. That traitor speaks poison. He has been corrupted by the Tauri. Kill him. Kill them all. You hide behind stone while your warriors face danger. Thor's voice boomed, Mjolnir spinning in his grip. What manner of god cowers while his servants fight? Or are you no god at all, but merely a coward in stolen flesh? The Goa'uld's eyes flashed with symbiote fury, that characteristic glowing white that marked parasitic possession. He raised his hand, a ribbon device, golden and ornate, strapped to his palm, and unleashed a wave of pure force at Thor. The god didn't even bother dodging. The telekinetic blast struck Mjolnir and dispersed like water hitting a dam, harmless. Thor smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "My turn," the god said simply. Lightning fell from the sky like the hammer of divine judgment, a column of electrical fury that struck the pyramid's peak with a sound like reality tearing. The false Apophis screamed, a sound that mixed human terror with Goa'uld rage, as Thor's power earthed through his body. The ribbon device exploded, the ornate armor blackened, and the Goa'uld fell from his perch, tumbling down the pyramid steps like a broken puppet. The villagers stared in absolute shock. Their god had fallen. Literally fallen, smoking and twitching, as mortal as any of them. "The god bleeds," someone whispered. Then louder, "The god bleeds." Steve used the chaos to reach the prisoners, his shield's edge cutting through chains with precise strikes. "Move. Now. Head for the tree lean." The young woman who tried to run earlier stared at him with wide eyes, taking in the star on his chest, the impossible situation. "Who are you?" "Someone who doesn't believe in gods," Steve replied. "Go. Run." Clint's arrows continued their precise work, each shot taking down a Jaffa with clinical efficiency. Natasha fought with brutal grace, using captured staff weapons against their former owners. Tony circled overhead, repulsor blasts keeping reinforcements pinned while Jarvis tracked orbital sensors for incoming ships. "Contact," Tony reported. "Death gliders launching from Hawkeye in orbit, ETA 90 seconds. Also, really hoping someone has a plan for extraction because I'm not rated for atmospheric re-entry carrying passengers." O'Neill emerged from the tree lean with Carter and Daniel, weapons up and firing controlled bursts. Daniel. Translation work, convince these people to head for the Stargate. Carter, prep emergency evac. We're about to have company. But the Jaffa weren't fighting anymore. They stood frozen, watching Teal'c approach the fallen Goa'uld with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who'd waited a lifetime for this moment. The false Apophis coughed, blood on his lips, human blood, from the host body. His eyes flickered between glowing white and terrified brown as the parasite and host struggled for control. You dare, strike a god. You are no god, Teal'c said, and raised his staff weapon. You are a slave master. A liar. A false prophet who has tormented my people for millennia. And your reign ends now. The staff blast took the Goa'uld in the chest, the energy discharge so intense it left nothing but ash and scorched stone. Silence fell across the village, broken only by the distant whine of approaching death gliders. Then, slowly, one Jaffa removed his serpent helm. Then another. And another. They knelt, but not in worship, in the military salute of warriors recognizing a superior officer. First Prime, one said quietly. Show us the way to freedom. Rise, Teal'c commanded. Free Jaffa kneel to no one. Not to false gods, not to me. You are warriors. Choose your own path. The sound of death gliders grew louder, their engine signatures screaming toward the village. Touching moment, really, O'Neill called out, but we need to move now. Steve, get those civilians to the gate. Tony, can you buy us time? I can be extremely distracting, Tony confirmed, rocketing skyward. Jarvis, target those gliders, weapons free. Steve grabbed the young woman who tried to escape. What's your name? Shayla, she managed, still in shock. Shayla, listen to me. That ring with the symbols, the Stargate, it's your way out. Gather everyone you can, everyone who wants freedom, and run. Don't stop, don't look back. Go now. She stared at him for one more moment, then turned and started shouting in a language Steve didn't understand, rallying villagers with the fierce authority of someone who'd found hope in the impossible. The first death glider screamed overhead, staff cannons blazing, but Tony intercepted it with a missile from his shoulder mount. The explosion painted the alien sky orange, debris raining down as the second glider banked hard, trying to acquire lock on the impossible target that moved like a fighter jet and hit like artillery. "Bruce!" Steve shouted into his comm, "We could use the other guy." "You sure?" Bruce's voice came back, tight with controlled tension. "Once he's out, he's going to want to smash everything. Point him at the bad guys and let him loose." There was a pause, then, "Okay. But I warned you." The roar that echoed across the valley wasn't human. It was primal fury given voice, the sound of rage incarnate. The Hulk burst from the tree line like a green avalanche, each footfall creating craters in the alien soil, his eyes fixed on the pyramid with single-minded destructive intent. "Hulk smash false gods!" The creature bellowed, and drove his fist into the pyramid's base with force that cracked the Nequata-reinforced stone like glass. The entire structure shuddered. Ancient mortar crumbled. The symbol of Goa'uld authority, standing for thousands of years, began to collapse. "Oh, that's going to send a message," O'Neill muttered, then shouted, "Fall back. Everyone to the gate, now." The retreat became controlled chaos, Steve and Natasha covering the rear while villagers streamed toward the Stargate, Daniel frantically explaining gate addresses and Earth Asylum protocols to anyone who would listen, Carter dialing coordinates while Clint provided overwatch from elevated position. Thor remained on the pyramid as it collapsed beneath him, riding the falling structure like a ship's captain going down with his vessel, Mjolnir deflecting debris and staff fire with equal ease. When he finally took flight, it was with a dozen Jaffa helmets clutched in his hand, trophies from warriors who'd surrendered rather than face divine wrath. The Hulk, meanwhile, had found the Hawk's transport rings and was smashing them with the methodical thoroughness of someone who understood that destroying infrastructure was how you won wars. Each impact sent shockwaves through the ground, each roar a declaration that false gods weren't welcome on this world anymore. Tony shot down the third death glider, its wreckage cartwheeling into the forest. Orbital sensors show the Hawk powering weapons. If they can't reclaim the village, they're going to glass it from orbit. "We've got maybe 2 minutes. Hulk!" Steve shouted. "We're leaving. Time to go." The green giant paused mid-smash, looked at the fleeing villagers, then at the pyramid wreckage, and seemed to make a decision. He grabbed a massive chunk of stone, easily 10 tons. And hurled it at the sky like a cosmic fastball. The improvised projectile arced upward, achieving escape velocity through sheer rage-fueled strength, and Steve lost sight of it against the twin suns. Did he just? Carter stared. Did he just throw a rock at a spaceship in orbit? "Gonna say yes," O'Neill replied. "Now move." They reached the Stargate as the first orbital strike scorched the village, superheated air turning sand to glass. Carter slammed her hand on the DHD, chevrons locking with desperate speed, and the wormhole exploded into existence just as death gliders screamed in for another attack run. "Go! Go! Go!" O'Neill shouted, pushing villagers through the event horizon. Shayla paused at the threshold, looking back at her burning world, and Steve saw the exact moment she chose freedom over everything she'd ever known. Then she stepped through and vanished. The Jaffa who'd knelt to Teal'c came next, warriors choosing rebellion over servitude, each one casting aside their serpent helms as they passed through the gate to uncertain futures. "Hulk, move!" Steve ordered as the green giant lumbered toward them, still roaring defiance at the sky. The Hulk dove through the Stargate with surprising grace for something his size, and reality twisted around the massive form. The gate's matter stream struggling to process that much angry biomass but succeeding through sheer ancient engineering excellence. Tony came last, flying backward, repulsors keeping death gliders at bay as he backed toward the event horizon. "This has been fun, but I'm not sticking around for the orbital bombardment. Jarvis, mark our exit as." A staff cannon blast caught his left leg, armor sparking and tearing. Tony spun, stabilized, and shot through the gate just as the iris on Earth's side began to close. The wormhole collapsed. The iris sealed. And silence fell in the SGC gate room as 20 liberated humans, a dozen defecting Jaffa, 6 Avengers, and SG-1 materialized in controlled chaos on the ramp. General Hammond stood in the control room, looking down at the impossible scene, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he pressed the intercom, medical teams to gate room. Diplomatic Corps to briefing room 3. And somebody get me a casualty report, a damage assessment, and a very good explanation for why we just extracted 40 people from a Goa'uld-occupied world. O'Neill grinned weakly. In my defense, sir, Captain Rogers started it. Steve, helping Shayla to her feet, met Hammond's eyes and didn't flinch. Sir, with respect, someone had to. For a long moment, Hammond just stared. Then, impossibly, the ghost of a smile touched his weathered face. Debrief in 1 hour, people. And Captain Rogers? Welcome to the Stargate program. Try not to start too many more wars on your first day. The briefing room felt smaller with 42 liberated souls now secured in SGC holding facilities undergoing medical screening, cultural orientation, and the gentle psychological work of deprogramming millennia of religious conditioning. Steve sat at the conference table still wearing his tactical gear, shield propped against his chair, while Dr. Fraser's preliminary report scrolled across the display screen behind General Hammond. Minimal casualties, Hammond read, his tone suggesting this fact surprised him more than it should. 3 villagers with minor injuries from the evacuation. 1 Jaffa with a broken arm from, he paused, glancing at the report, being thrown by the Hulk. Mr. Stark has second-degree burns on his left leg where staff fire compromised his armor. No fatalities on our side. The Goa'uld Underlord didn't make it, O'Neill added helpfully. But I'm filing that under acceptable losses given he was about to turn 20 people into snake puppets. Hammond set down the report and fixed Steve with a look that had probably made colonels reconsider their life choices. Captain Rogers. You countermanded a direct observation-only order, engaged a superior Goa'uld force, destroyed a pyramid that had stood for 3,000 years, caused 12 Jaffa to defect, and triggered an orbital bombardment of a previously stable world. In military terms, this is what we call a significant escalation. Yes, sir, Steve replied, meeting the general's gaze without apology. And I'd do it again. I know you would, Hammond said quietly. That's what concerns me. Colonel O'Neill, your assessment. O'Neill leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying Steve with the evaluating eye of a career Special Forces operator. Tactically, it was a mess. We had no intel on reinforcements, no extraction plan beyond run really fast, and we relied on unprecedented capabilities, he nodded toward Thor and Tony, that we couldn't predict or control. By the book, it was a disaster waiting to happen. He paused, then continued, strategically. We just freed 42 people who can testify to exactly what the Goa'uld are. We gained a dozen Jaffa warriors with intimate knowledge of Apophis's forces and tactics. We demonstrated to an entire planet that their gods can bleed, fall, and die. And we recovered this. O'Neill placed a small crystalline device on the table, salvaged from the pyramid's ruins during extraction. Carter immediately leaned forward, her scientific interest overriding protocol. That's a Goa'uld long-range communication crystal, she said, activating her tablet to scan it. These are used for coordinating between system lords, encrypted using Naquata frequency modulation. If I can decrypt it, we might have access to communication networks across multiple Goa'uld territories. Which brings us to the elephant in the room, Daniel said, pushing his glasses up nervously. The Tesseract. The fake Apophis mentioned detecting an artifact of immense power in this system. He was actively searching for it before we, removed him from the equation. Tony, his left leg bandaged but his arc reactor glowing steadily through his shirt, pulled up holographic displays from his armor's recorded data. I scanned energy signatures across the system during our aerial conversation with those death gliders. There's definitely something giving off massive quantum fluctuations. Signature matches the Tesseract's output from our dimension. Distance suggests it's not on Sharon, but somewhere else in the system. One of the outer planets. Carter suggested, already pulling up astronomical data. P3X 797 is a 7-planet system. If the Tesseract materialized during transit, it could have been caught by any of the gravitational wells. Or someone already found it, Natasha said quietly from her position by the door. She'd been silent throughout the debrief, watchful and assessing, but now her voice carried the weight of experience with worst-case scenarios. The Goa'uld have been operating in this galaxy for thousands of years. They have sensor networks, probe ships, intelligence operations. If they detected the energy spike, they've had hours to investigate. Teal'c, who'd been standing at parade rest, spoke with the authority of someone who'd served the enemy for a century. The System Lords compete ruthlessly for any advantage. Ancient artifacts, advanced weapons, sources of power, these are the currencies of their wars against each other. If word has spread that a powerful artifact has appeared in Apophis's territory, other System Lords will move to claim it. Or Anubis will. The name fell into the conversation like a stone into still water. Anubis, Hammond repeated. Major Carter, brief our guests on this particular threat. Carter's expression went grim. Anubis is different from other Goa'uld. Most System Lords operate within understood parameters, stolen ancient technology, modified for their purposes, used to maintain power over enslaved populations. Anubis was exiled by the other System Lords thousands of years ago for crimes so severe even they found them unacceptable. He's recently returned with knowledge of the ancients that surpasses anything we've encountered. Ships with shields that regenerate, weapons that can destroy entire fleets, technology that suggests he's had access to ancient databases or he's partially ascended, Daniel interrupted quietly. We've encountered evidence that Anubis achieved some form of partial ascension, existing between mortal and energy forms. The ascended ancients couldn't stop him without violating their non-interference rules, so he exists in a loophole. Powerful enough to use ancient knowledge, physical enough to still influence the mortal plane. Bruce, who'd been quietly nursing a cup of coffee and trying not to think about the Hulk's rampage, looked up sharply. Partial ascension? That's not possible. Ascension is a complete transition to higher dimensional existence. You can't be halfway there, it violates basic principles of dimensional physics. Welcome to the Stargate program, Dr. Banner, Daniel said with dark humor. Where impossible is just another Tuesday. Anubis shouldn't exist, but he does. And if he gets his hands on an Infinity Stone, he'd become unstoppable, Thor finished grimly. The god sat with Mjolnir resting across his knees, still wearing armor scorched from staff fire and lightning discharge. In my realm, the Infinity Stones are artifacts of cosmic power, each governing a fundamental aspect of reality. The Tesseract contains the Space Stone, dominion over distance, location, teleportation. In the hands of one who already commands ancient knowledge and partial divine power. He could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly, Carter concluded, her face pale. Bypass all defenses. Strike at Earth directly. Or worse, use it to access other dimensions, other realities. If Anubis figures out what the Tesseract actually is, then we're not just fighting for this galaxy, Steve said quietly. We're fighting to keep the multiverse from being invaded by a half-ascended snake with delusions of godhood. Silence settled over the briefing room, the weight of cosmic stakes pressing down on everyone present. Hammond broke it with the practical authority of a man who'd been fighting impossible odds for years. Then we find the Tesseract first. Major Carter, work with Dr. Stark. I want scanning protocols established for detecting quantum anomalies across the P3X 797 system. Teal'c, interrogate the defecting Jaffa. Find out what they know about Goa'uld search patterns and artifact recovery operations. Daniel, translate that communication crystal. I want to know what the System Lords are saying to each other. What about us? Steve asked. Hammond studied him for a long moment. Captain Rogers, your team just demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything we have available. Superhuman combat effectiveness, advanced technology, literal divine intervention, and a rage monster that can throw rocks at spaceships. You're also unpredictable, unfamiliar with Goa'uld tactics, and prone to making command decisions that prioritize immediate heroics over long-term strategic considerations. That sounds like a criticism and a compliment fighting for dominance, Tony observed. It's an assessment, Hammond replied. And here's mine, you're going back through the gate. SG-1 will lead a reconnaissance mission to the outer planets of the P3X 797 system. You'll provide support, firepower, and hopefully recover your artifact before it falls into the wrong hands. Colonel O'Neill retains mission command. You follow his orders, or you don't go. Clear. Crystal clear, sir, Steve confirmed. When do we leave? 0600 hours tomorrow, O'Neill said. That gives us 12 hours to prep, integrate our new Jaffa intel, and figure out how to transport a cosmic cube without accidentally opening portals to dimensions full of things that want to eat us. Standard Tuesday. I'll need access to your fabrication facilities, Tony said immediately. My armor took damage, and if we're going after an Infinity Stone, I want to be operating at full capacity. Also, I have about 17 ideas for integrating the quad power systems with arc reactor technology, and I work better when I'm building things. Major Carter will escort you to the machine shop on level 22, Hammond said. Try not to cause any explosions. We've had enough excitement for one day. No promises, Tony replied cheerfully, already pulling up schematics on his holographic display. But I'll keep the property damage to a minimum. Carter, you coming? This is going to be the most fun you've had with exotic matter interactions since, I'm guessing, ever. Carter was already on her feet, scientific enthusiasm warring with military discipline and losing badly. General, permission to go, Hammond said with the resignation of a man who knew when he'd lost control of his officers to science. Just keep start from reverse engineering anything that will get us invaded by the NID. As Tony and Carter left, already deep in animated discussion about power coupling ratios, Natasha moved from her position by the door to take a seat at the table. General Hammond, she said quietly, I need to discuss operational security. You've just taken in 12 Jaffa defectors and 29 civilians from a culture that's been enslaved for millennia. They're traumatized, confused, and potentially compromised. How do you know one of them isn't a Goa'uld spy? We don't, Daniel said. But we have protocols. Medical screening checks for Goa'uld symbiotes, they show up on X-rays, MRI, thermal imaging. Dr. Fraser's team is thorough. If any of our refugees are hosting snakes, we'll know. And if they're not hosting but reporting back somehow? Natasha pressed. Implanted technology, hypnotic conditioning, sleeper protocols. I've run intelligence operations, the best spies don't even know they're spies until activated. Teal'c's expression darkened. You speak wisdom, Natasha Romanoff. The Goa'uld are masters of manipulation. They could have planted false defectors among my brothers, knowing that Teal'c's words might inspire rebellion. A single spy could compromise Earth's location, gate addresses, defensive capabilities. Which is why they're in secured holding, Hammond said firmly. No one gets access to classified information until they've been cleared through multiple screening protocols. We've dealt with Goa'uld infiltration before. We'll handle it now. With respect, General, Natasha said, you've never dealt with someone like me looking for holes in your security. Give me 3 hours and I'll have a full assessment of vulnerability points, potential compromise vectors, and recommendations for enhanced screening. O'Neill looked at Hammond, one eyebrow raised in silent question. The general considered, then nodded. 3 hours, Agent Romanoff. Report directly to me. And try not to terrify my security personnel too badly. They're already nervous about the giant green physicist. Where is Dr. Banner? Bruce asked, speaking for the first time in several minutes. I mean, where's the Hulk? After we came through the gate, I remember transforming back, but everything's a bit fuzzy. Medical observation on level 25, O'Neill replied. Dr. Fraser wanted to run some tests, with your permission, to understand how the transformation works. Something about gamma radiation signatures and cellular restructuring. You passed out after reverting, which she said was normal for that kind of physiological stress. Bruce nodded slowly. The transformation burns enormous calories, and the reversion is traumatic. I usually need food, rest, and time to process what the Hulk did while he was out. He saved lives, Steve said firmly. Those people are free because the Hulk smashed their prison and made their false god look pathetic. That matters, Bruce. He also destroyed a 3,000-year-old pyramid and threw a rock at a spaceship, Bruce replied, but there was the ghost of a smile on his face. I'm still processing that he actually did that. The rock achieved orbital velocity, Carter called back from the doorway, apparently unable to resist contributing to the discussion despite having been dismissed. I ran the calculations. Based on observed trajectory and estimated mass, the Hulk generated approximately 2.7 gigajoules of kinetic energy in a single throw. That's equivalent to a small tactical warhead. Also, preliminary orbital telemetry suggests he actually hit the Hatak. Everyone stared at her. He hit the spaceship, O'Neill repeated flatly. The Hulk threw a rock and hit a spaceship in orbit. Caused minor hull damage to their starboard landing bay, Carter confirmed. Probably scared them more than hurt them, but yes. Direct hit. Now if you'll excuse me, Dr. Stark is waiting and I really need to see his miniaturized reactor design before I explode from curiosity. She disappeared, leaving a stunned silence behind. Thor began to laugh, a deep, genuine sound of pure delight. I like this Hulk. He fights with the directness of Volstagg and the fury of Hogan. When next he emerges, I shall challenge him to feats of strength. It will be glorious. Please don't encourage him, Bruce said weakly. The Hulk doesn't need more reasons to show off. Moving on, Hammond said, visibly trying to regain control of the briefing. Agent Barton, you've been quiet. Assessment. Clint had been studying the tactical displays showing P3X 797 system layouts, his mind clearly running combat scenarios. Sir, if we're going after an Infinity Stone, we need to consider that everyone in this galaxy who has sensors is probably looking for the same thing. We're not just racing the Goa'uld, we're racing every faction, every power, everyone who detected that energy spike. This isn't a stealth mission. This is going to be a fight for possession of the most dangerous artifact in 2 universes. Which means we need allies, Steve said, understanding dawning. General, you mentioned the Takar earlier, the Goa'uld resistance. Would they help us? If we can convince them the threat is real, Daniel said. The Takar are cautious. They've been fighting a secret war against the System Lords for 2,000 years. They don't trust easily, and they definitely don't trust unknown quantities like dimensional travelers claiming to possess cosmic artifacts. Then we prove it, Steve said simply. We show them what the Tesseract can do, what it represents. We make them understand that this isn't just another ancient device, this is something that could destabilize the entire galaxy if it falls into the wrong hands. The Takar High Council meets in 3 days, Teal'c said. Jacob Carter, Major Carter's father, who is blended with the Takar Selmak, would speak for us. If we present evidence, they may provide intelligence, resources, perhaps even direct assistance. 3 days we might not have, O'Neill countered. If Anubis is already moving. Then we move faster, Steve said, and there was steel in his voice now, the Captain America who'd crashed a plane into the Arctic, who defied governments and fought for what was right rather than what was legal. Tomorrow we search the outer planets. If we find the Tesseract, we secure it and bring it back here. If we find Anubis instead, we delay him, sabotage him, do whatever it takes to buy time for reinforcements. And if we find both? Natasha asked. Steve met her eyes, and she saw the same calculation she'd made 100 times in the Red Room, the same cold tactical assessment that marked every operator who'd lived long enough to become exceptional. Then we fight, Steve said quietly. Because that's what we do. Hammond stood, signaling the briefing's end with military finality. 12 hours, people. Rest, prep, and pray we're not about to start a war that ends with a half-ascended Goa'uld controlling reality itself. Dismissed. As the room cleared, Steve found himself alone with O'Neill, who'd lingered behind. Captain, the colonel said quietly. What you did today, defying orders, rushing into combat, prioritizing immediate rescue over strategic considerations, that's going to happen again, isn't it? Steve considered lying, considered offering reassurances he couldn't keep. Instead, he told the truth, if I see innocent people suffering and I have the power to stop it, yes sir, I'll act. Every time. I can't stand by and do nothing. It's not who I am. O'Neill was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah. I know. Because it's who I am too. He smiled, and it was the weary expression of a soldier who'd made the same impossible choices too many times. Just try to give me a heads up before you start the next war, okay? I like to be prepared when I'm throwing out the rulebook. I'll do my best, Colonel. That's all any of us can do, Captain. O'Neill headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. Those 42 people are free because you wouldn't accept the alternative. That matters. Even when it makes my job harder, it matters. He left, and Steve sat alone in the briefing room, shield leaning against his chair, staring at the star map showing the P3X-797 system. Somewhere out there, in that collection of planets orbiting alien suns, was the Tesseract. The key to infinite power. The artifact that could open doorways between dimensions. And somewhere out there, a half-ascended evil was searching for the same thing. Tomorrow, the Avengers would step through the Stargate again. But this time, they weren't just fighting for freedom. They were fighting for the fate of two universes. The machine shop on level 22 looked like a tornado had achieved sentience and decided to organize a technology expo. Tony had been working for 6 hours straight, transforming SGC's pristine fabrication facility into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Naquata crystals scattered across workbenches, holographic schematics floating in mid-air, arc reactor components interfaced with ancient technology in ways that made the Air Force engineers watching from a safe distance either fascinated or terrified. Possibly both. Steve found him there at 0200 hours, knowing from experience that Tony's concept of rest before a mission meant obsessively build things until someone physically removes you from the workshop. You should be sleeping, Steve said, observing the modified armor suit standing in the center of the workspace, its leg section completely rebuilt with what appeared to be a hybrid of Stark technology and Goa'uld design principles. Sleep is for people who aren't integrating alien superconductors into their life support system, Tony replied without looking up from his work. His hands moved with practiced precision, installing an Naquata power coupling into the armor's damaged leg assembly. Besides, Carter's still here, and she gets it. She actually gets it, Cap. Do you know how rare that is? Someone who understands quantum mechanics, material science, and doesn't look at me like I'm crazy when I suggest using exotic matter to create localized field effects. Major Carter emerged from behind the armor, holding a crystalline component that pulsed with internal light. The Naquata reactor integration is stable, she reported, sounding both exhausted and exhilarated. Power output increased by 40%, efficiency gains across all systems. Dr. Stark, this is revolutionary. If we can replicate this for our F-302 fighters. Already working on it, Tony interrupted, pulling up new schematics. I'm sending Jarvis's design files to your fabrication computers. Consider it a thank you gift for letting me play with your alien technology. Though technically we're in a parallel dimension, so I'm not violating any export restrictions, right? Steve cleared his throat pointedly. Right, Tony sighed, finally stepping back from his work. The responsible adult has arrived to enforce bedtime. Fine. Armor's operational, legs better than new, and I've only had 6 cups of coffee in the last hour. I'm practically a model of restraint. 7 cups, Carter corrected with a small smile. I was counting. See? She even tracks my caffeine intake. We're basically best friends now. Tony's arc reactor glowed brighter for a moment as he ran final diagnostics. Jarvis, status report. All systems operational, sir, the AI responded through Tony's workshop speakers. The Naquadah integration has increased power reserves by 42% and improved shield efficiency by 37%. Flight systems are performing at 118% of previous capacity. I have also taken the liberty of analyzing Goa'uld staff weapon energy signatures and programmed countermeasures into the armor's defensive protocols. That's my boy, Tony said with genuine affection. Carter, you should meet Jarvis properly. He's an artificial intelligence, runs on quantum processing architecture, and he's got a better sense of humor than most humans I know. I remain skeptical of that assessment, sir, Jarvis replied dryly. Carter was staring at the armor with undisguised fascination. You have a functional AI. We've been trying to develop something similar for Prometheus, our first Earth-built capital ship, but the processing requirements for true artificial intelligence are beyond our current capabilities. I could help with that, Tony offered. After we save the multiverse from snake gods and recover my cosmic cube, obviously. Priorities. Steve moved between Tony and the workbench, physically breaking his line of sight to the armor. Tony. Sleep. That's an order. You're not my commanding officer, Cap. No, but I am the guy who's going to tell Pepper you stayed up all night tinkering with alien technology instead of taking care of yourself. Tony's expression went through several rapid transitions: defiance, calculation, resignation. That's a low blow, using my healthy relationship against me. Whatever works, Steve replied. 4 hours. Actual sleep, not resting your eyes while Jarvis runs simulations. We gate out in less than 4 hours, and I need you sharp, not running on caffeine and genius. I hate it when you're reasonable, Tony muttered, but he was already moving toward the door. Carter, thanks for the collaboration. Next time I'm in this dimension, we're publishing a paper that'll make the physics community spontaneously combust. I'll hold you to that, Dr. Stark, Carter said, already organizing the scattered components with military efficiency. Captain Rogers is right, though. Get some rest. Tomorrow's mission is going to require everyone at peak performance. After Tony left, still muttering about responsible leadership and proper scientific methodology, Steve lingered, watching Carter work with the methodical precision of someone who found comfort in order. Major, he said quietly, can I ask you something? She looked up from her organization, blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun, exhaustion evident but controlled. Of course, Captain. How do you do this? Steve gestured vaguely at the facility around them. Every day, you step through that gate knowing you might not come back. You face gods and parasites and technology that could destroy Earth. And you keep going. What keeps you fighting? Carter was quiet for a moment, considering her answer with the gravity it deserved. I'm a scientist, Captain Rogers. I became an astrophysicist because I wanted to understand the universe, to explore the impossible and make it real. The Stargate program gave me that opportunity, but it also showed me the cost. I've seen civilizations enslaved, watched good people die, faced threats that make nuclear war look like a playground dispute. She set down the crystal component she'd been holding, meeting Steve's eyes directly. But I've also seen what happens when good people refuse to give up. I've watched Colonel O'Neill talk his way out of impossible situations, seen Teal'c inspire an entire race to rebellion, helped Daniel prove that understanding can be as powerful as weapons. We keep fighting because the alternative is surrender, and surrender means billions of people stay enslaved. So we gate out every day, we do what we can, and we trust that it matters. It does matter, Steve said quietly. What you've built here. This program, this team, this resistance against tyranny across the stars, it's remarkable. You're remarkable. Carter smiled, genuine and tired. Coming from Captain America, I'll take that as high praise. Now go get some rest yourself, Captain. You freed 42 people today. Tomorrow you might free millions, but only if you're alive to do it. Steve found his assigned quarters on level 18, Spartan military accommodations that felt familiar in their simplicity. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself walking the corridors of Cheyenne Mountain, shield slung across his back, thinking about parallel lives and shared duties. He found Natasha in the security monitoring station, reviewing footage with the systematic thoroughness of a professional spy. Can't sleep either? Steve asked, settling into a chair beside her. Sleeping in enemy territory is a rookie mistake, she replied without looking up from her screens. And make no mistake, Steve, we're in enemy territory. These people have been kind, professional, and welcoming. They're also monitoring everything we do, analyzing our capabilities, and calculating whether we're assets or threats. We're on the same side, Nat. Are we? She finally looked at him, green eyes sharp with intelligence and experience. They fight a war against alien slavers across thousands of worlds. We fight to protect our Earth, our dimension. Our goals align temporarily because of the Tesseract, but what happens when we get it back? When we can go home? Do we just leave them to fight alone? Do we offer to stay and help, potentially trapping ourselves in a war that isn't ours? There are no good answers, Steve. Only choices with consequences we can't predict. Steve was quiet, because she was right. She usually was about these things. I reviewed the security protocols, Natasha continued, pulling up data on her screen. Hammond wasn't exaggerating, they've dealt with infiltration before. Goa'uld possession, mind control, replicant infiltrators, time-displaced duplicates. They have procedures for everything. But they're also desperate. They've been fighting a losing war for years, barely holding on through luck and exceptional personnel. We represent capabilities they've never had access to. That makes us valuable. And valuable assets get leveraged, Steve. Whether we want to be or not. You think they'll try to keep us here? I think they'll give us every reason to stay voluntarily, Natasha said. And I think some of our team will be tempted. Tony's already in love with their technology. Thor sees a war against false gods as a noble crusade. Bruce finally found people who look at the Hulk as an asset instead of a monster. Even you, Steve, how many times did you look at those freed slaves today and think about all the others still suffering? Every time, Steve didn't say. Because she already knew. We complete the mission, Steve said finally. We recover the Tesseract, we help these people survive whatever's coming, and then we make our choices. Together. As a team. Always the optimist, Natasha said, but there was affection in her voice. Get some rest, Cap. Tomorrow we're flying into an alien solar system to recover a cosmic artifact before a half-ascended evil finds it. We're going to need our fearless leader at his best. Steve found Thor on the surface, having somehow convinced the security personnel to let him access the external observation platform. The god stood in the mountain wind, Mjolnir resting against his shoulder, staring at Earth's single moon with an expression of deep contemplation. Thinking about home? Steve asked, joining him at the railing. Thinking about the nature of divinity, Thor replied quietly. In my realm, I am called a god. People worship me, build temples, offer prayers. I have always known this was wrong, that I am simply a being of greater power and longer life, not a deity worthy of worship. But I accepted it as cultural tradition, harmless mythology. He turned to face Steve, and his eyes held genuine pain. Here, I have seen what happens when false gods demand worship backed by genuine power. The Goa'uld are not so different from me, Captain Rogers. They are powerful beings using advanced technology and long lives to dominate lesser species. The only distinction is intent. I use my power to protect, they use theirs to enslave. But the relationship is the same. Mortals kneeling before immortals. No, Steve said firmly. Thor, you are nothing like the Goa'uld. You fight beside mortals as equals. You take orders from me, a human with no divine power at all, because you respect the mission and the team. The Goa'uld are parasites who steal bodies and demand submission. You're a warrior who earns respect through action. That difference matters. Does it? Thor asked. Tomorrow we return to that system, and I will wield lightning against our enemies. The people there will see me and think, God. How am I different from Apophis in their eyes? Because after we win, you'll leave, Steve said. You won't demand worship. You won't enslave them. You'll fight for their freedom and then trust them to build their own futures. The Goa'uld could never do that, they need slaves to function. You don't. That's the difference between a hero and a tyrant, Thor. One fights to liberate. The other fights to dominate. Thor considered this, then nodded slowly. You speak wisdom, Captain. I shall remember it when we face the false gods tomorrow. And perhaps, when we return to our own realm, I will have conversations with my father about the nature of Asgard's relationship with the 9 realms. If this experience has taught me anything, it is that power without accountability becomes tyranny, no matter how benevolent the intent. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 warriors from different worlds contemplating the same eternal questions about duty, power, and responsibility. Finally, Steve spoke, get some rest, Thor. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Indeed, Thor said, and there was the ghost of a smile on his face. Teal'c's word is most appropriate. I find myself using it frequently. Steve's final stop was the medical observation wing, where Bruce sat alone in a room designed for isolation, staring at readouts from Dr. Fraser's examination with the haunted expression of a man confronting uncomfortable truths. Bruce? Steve knocked gently, waiting for permission to enter. Come in, Bruce said quietly. I'm not contagious. Probably. Steve settled into a chair across from him, noting the medical equipment, the reinforced walls, the emergency containment protocols visible on the door panel. Fraser treating you okay? She's brilliant, Bruce said sincerely. And she's not afraid of me, which is refreshing. She ran tests on my cellular structure, gamma radiation absorption, the transformation process. She says the Hulk is integrated into my biology at the quantum level. Not a separate entity, not possession, just me. All of me, the part I've been trying to suppress or control or understand for years. How does that make you feel? Bruce laughed, brittle and tired. Like I've been running from myself instead of facing the truth. Steve, when I transformed on Sharon, when the Hulk came out and fought beside you, that felt right. He wasn't just smashing randomly. He protected civilians. He targeted enemy combatants. He threw a rock at a spaceship because he understood we needed to stop orbital bombardment. That's not mindless rage. That's tactical thinking. That's me thinking, just angrier and greener. The Hulk is you, Steve said simply. Always has been. Just a different part of you that comes out when anger and adrenaline overwhelm rational thought. Doesn't make him evil, Bruce. Makes him human. Human, Bruce repeated. I turned into a 9-foot-tall green rage monster and you're calling that human? I've seen humans commit atrocities with nothing but ordinary bodies and ideological certainty, Steve replied. I've seen what people become when they surrender their morality to authority or fear. The Hulk fights to protect people, Bruce. That makes him more human than a lot of normal folks I've met. Bruce was quiet for a long moment, then, Fraser says the Hulk's gamma signature is unique. Nothing in their database matches it. Which means if we do go home, if we recover the Tesseract and reverse what happened, I'll be taking something truly unique out of this universe. A piece of their data, their knowledge. Feels strange, being an unknown variable in a place that's catalogued thousands of alien species. You're not a variable, Bruce. You're a person. And tomorrow, that person is going to help us save the multiverse. Now get some rest. Doctor's orders, mine, not Fraser's. Bruce managed a genuine smile. Thanks, Cap. For seeing the Hulk as more than just destruction. Always, Steve replied. He made it back to his quarters with 90 minutes before mission departure. Sleep came in fragments, dreams of alien skies and impossible battles mixing with memories of war and ice and waking up in a world that had moved on without him. When the alarm sounded at 0500 hours, Steve rose feeling not rested but ready. Because ready was what soldiers learned to be, regardless of sleep or fear or the impossible odds ahead. The Avengers assembled in the gate room at 0545, each carrying the marks of their night's preparation. Tony's armor gleamed with Naquadah integration, power levels reading higher than ever. Natasha moved with the controlled lethality of someone who'd identified every vulnerability and prepared countermeasures. Clint checked his bow with the methodical precision of ritual. Thor's armor had been cleaned of yesterday's scorch marks, Mjolnir practically humming with contained lightning. Bruce stood slightly apart, wearing borrowed BDUs and looking like he was trying to convince himself this was all real. SG-1 waited at the gate, similarly armed and ready. O'Neill caught Steve's eye and nodded once, the silent communication of soldiers about to walk into danger together. Hammond's voice came through the speakers, SG-1, SG-13, you have a go. Primary objective. Locate and secure the artifact. Secondary objective, gather intelligence on Goa'uld search operations. Rules of engagement, defensive only unless directly threatened. We're trying to recover an artifact, people, not start a war with every system lord in the galaxy. Defined, directly threatened, O'Neill said innocently. Colonel O'Neill, I'm trusting your judgment. Try not to make me regret it. Sir, yes sir, O'Neill replied with suspicious enthusiasm. The Stargate activated, chevrons locking in sequence. The event horizon stabilized, shimmering with the promise of distant worlds and unknown dangers. Avengers, Steve said quietly, and 5 pairs of eyes turned to him. We go through that gate, we're committing to something bigger than ourselves. We're fighting not just for our dimension, but for this one too. Whatever we face out there, Goa'uld, Anubis, the unknown, we face it together. As a team. As a family, Clint added. As the Earth's mightiest heroes, Tony said with theatrical grandeur. Even in alternate dimensions. For freedom and honor, Thor declared. For people who deserve better, Bruce said quietly. For the mission, Natasha finished. Steve raised his shield, feeling the weight of command and trust and impossible responsibility settle onto his shoulders one more time. Then let's go save the multiverse. They stepped through the Stargate together, reality dissolving around them, and emerged into an alien solar system where a cosmic artifact waited to be claimed. The war for the Tesseract had begun. The 6th planet of the P3X 797 system was a frozen wasteland of methane ice and howling storms, its surface temperature registering at -200°C. Steve materialized through the gate onto a landing platform carved from glacial formations, his breath crystallizing instantly in the alien atmosphere before the environmental force field shimmered into place around the gate complex. Ancient outpost, Carter reported immediately, her scanner painting holographic readouts across the frozen landscape. Automated defenses active, atmosphere containment operational, power readings suggest a ZPM or equivalent running at 15% capacity. This facility has been here for millions of years and it's still functional. And recently visited, Teal'c observed, pointing to scorch marks on the ice, staff weapon fire, no more than hours old. Jaffa patrol, standard reconnaissance formation. They searched here and departed. Whether they found what they sought remains unknown. Tony's armor sensor swept the facility with systematic precision, the Naquadah integration allowing him to interface directly with ancient technology in ways that made Carter's eyes widen with professional envy. I'm detecting massive energy fluctuations 0.7 kilometers northeast, inside what looks like the main research complex. Quantum signature matches the Tesseract, but there's interference, like something's trying to contain or study it. Could be ancient automated systems, Daniel suggested, already moving toward the facility entrance with the eager curiosity of an archaeologist who'd found the ultimate dig site. The ancients were obsessed with understanding fundamental forces. If the Tesseract appeared here, their systems might have activated containment protocols to study it. Or something else got here first, Natasha said quietly, her weapon up and tracking potential threats. Those staff marks are fresh, but there are no bodies, no signs of combat beyond the initial firing. Whatever the Jaffa encountered, they either captured it or ran from it. The facility entrance loomed before them, massive doors carved with ancient script that glowed with soft blue light, responding to proximity with the seamless automation of technology that had operated flawlessly for eons. The doors split apart with a whisper of ancient mechanisms, revealing corridors that stretched into darkness lit only by emergency lighting systems running on backup power. Standard entry formation, O'Neill ordered. Teal'c on point, Carter running sensors, Daniel translating anything that looks important. Avengers, your center mass, save the heroics for when things inevitably go sideways. When, not if, Clint noted. I appreciate the optimism. They moved into the facility with tactical precision, boots silent on floors that hadn't felt footsteps in millennia. The ancient architecture was elegant even in decay, sweeping curves and impossible geometries that suggested the builders understood dimensions of space humans couldn't perceive. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, ancient text scrolling across walls in response to their presence. Daniel stopped at one display, fingers tracing symbols with reverent precision. This is a research log. The ancients were studying dimensional barriers, trying to understand the structure of the multiverse. They theorized that reality wasn't singular but infinite, parallel dimensions stacked like pages in a book, separated by energy barriers that could be breached with sufficient power. Like the Tesseract, Bruce said, understanding dawning. An Infinity Stone generates energy on cosmic scales. If it breached dimensional barriers during our transit, the ancients' automated systems would have detected it as proof of their multiverse theories. They'd activate every sensor, every containment system, trying to study it. Which means we're walking into a laboratory designed by the most advanced civilization in galactic history, configured to contain and analyze an artifact of infinite power, Tony summarized. This is either going to be really educational or really fatal. Possibly both. Thor's eyes tracked the ancient script with surprising focus. These symbols, they remind me of writings in Asgard's royal vault. Different language, but similar mathematical concepts underlying the structure. Your ancients and my people may have discovered similar truths about reality's nature, simply expressed through different cultural frameworks. Convergent cosmic understanding, Daniel breathed. Thor, if we survive this, I need to spend about 6 months comparing ancient and Asgardian cosmological theories. The implications for understanding how different advanced civilizations perceive fundamental reality. Daniel, O'Neill interrupted. Geek out later. Survive now. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that made everyone stop involuntarily. The space was spherical, easily 100 meters in diameter, its walls covered in ancient technology that pulsed with barely contained energy. And at the center, suspended in a containment field that crackled with power, floated the Tesseract. The cube rotated slowly in its prison of energy, blue light radiating from its surface in waves that made the air shimmer and twist. Around it, ancient holographic displays showed complex mathematical equations, energy readings, dimensional mapping data, the automated analysis of a civilization that had achieved near godhood studying an artifact that transcended even their understanding. There it is, Steve said quietly, and despite everything. The impossible journey, the alien galaxy, the cosmic stakes, seeing the Tesseract again felt like coming home. We found it. Not alone, Captain Rogers, a voice said from the shadows, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop despite the environmental controls. Figures emerged from concealed positions around the chamber's perimeter, Jaffa warriors in black armor marked with a symbol Steve didn't recognize. But it was the figure at their center that commanded attention, tall, robed in dark fabric that seemed to absorb light, face hidden behind a mask that glowed with malevolent red light. I am Anubis, the voice continued, modulated through technology to sound inhuman and terrible. And you have saved me considerable effort by gathering in one location. The dimensional travelers who brought this artifact to my galaxy. How convenient. O'Neill's weapon came up instantly. Anubis. Heard a lot about you. None of it good. How about you and your tin soldier step away from the cosmic cube and we all walk away friends? Friends, Anubis repeated, and there was dark amusement in his voice. I think not, Colonel O'Neill. I have studied your species, primitive, short-lived, yet possessing remarkable capacity for interference. You destroyed my fleet at Abydos. Recovered technology that should have been mine. Allied with the Asgard against me. And now you dare to claim an artifact of power beyond anything this galaxy has produced. Actually, Tony said, his faceplate snapping down and repulsors charging, we dare to reclaim our property that accidentally fell into your dimension. Big difference. Now power down your glowing eyes and step aside before this gets ugly. Anubis turned his masked face toward Tony, and Steve felt the weight of ancient malevolence focusing on his teammate. Iron Man Anthony Edward Stark. Genius. Billionaire. Wielder of technology that rivals the ancients in miniaturization and efficiency. Your arc reactor is fascinating. I shall enjoy studying it after your death. Everyone always wants to study my tech, Tony muttered. Nobody ever just asks nicely. Anubis, Carter said, her voice carrying scientific authority rather than military command. You're partially ascended. You exist between mortal and energy forms. The Tesseract generates power by manipulating fundamental forces, space, distance, dimensional barriers. If you try to harness it in your current state, the energy feedback could destabilize your dimensional anchoring. You could be pulled fully into ascension, and the others would. Silence. Anubis's voice cracked like thunder. Do not presume to lecture me on ascension, Major Carter. I have walked the path between mortality and godhood for millennia. I have learned secrets the ancients tried to hide from lesser beings. And I will harness this Tesseract to transcend the limitations the others imposed on me. I will become truly divine, beyond their reach, beyond their rules. And this galaxy will kneel before me as I reshape reality itself. Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir crackling with gathering lightning. I have met many beings who claimed divinity to justify tyranny. You are the first who actually achieved partial godhood and chose to remain evil. That takes dedication to wickedness I almost admire. Almost. Mostly I just want to hit you with my hammer. You are Thor Odinson, Anubis said, and there was genuine interest now. The ancient database contains references to beings matching your description, though from different dimensional frameworks. You claim to be a god. Yet you serve mortals. Why? Because that's what good leaders do, Thor replied simply. We serve those we protect. We earn respect rather than demand it. Concepts utterly foreign to parasites like you. Anubis raised one hand, and the Jaffa opened fire. The chamber exploded into combat. Steve's shield deflected staff blasts while he closed distance, slamming into Jaffa ranks with super soldier speed and strength. Natasha moved like liquid death, taking down opponents with precise strikes to armor weak points. Clint's arrows flew with impossible accuracy, each shot finding gaps in helmets and joints. Tony took to the air, repulsors blazing as he engaged the Jaffa positioned on elevated platforms. His Naquata-enhanced weapons tore through their defenses with efficiency that made their return fire look pitiful by comparison. Teal'c and O'Neill fought as one unit, their years of partnership evident in synchronized movements. O'Neill providing covering fire while Teal'c's staff weapon swept Jaffa from positions, each protecting the other's blind spots with practiced efficiency. But Anubis wasn't participating in the fight. He stood before the ancient containment field studying the Tesseract with the focused intensity of someone solving a complex puzzle. His hands, if they could still be called hands in his partially ascended state, manipulated energy fields invisible to normal sight, probing the ancient technology for weaknesses. Carter. O'Neill shouted between bursts of P-90 fire. He's trying to access the containment system. I see it. Carter was already at an ancient control console, her hands flying across holographic interfaces. The system is designed to prevent tampering, but Anubis has partial ancient knowledge from his ascension. He's using that to bypass security protocols. If he succeeds in lowering the field, he gets the Tesseract and we all die horribly, Tony finished, firing a missile that took out 3 Jaffa in a cluster. Jarvis, analysis, can we disrupt his access? Analyzing, sir. Anubis's manipulation operates on frequencies associated with ascended beings. Your current weaponry cannot affect those energy states. Then we need someone who operates on those frequencies, Bruce said quietly. He'd taken cover behind an ancient pillar, staying out of the direct combat, but now his expression held grim determination. Someone who channels cosmic energy through biological transformation. Bruce, no, Steve said immediately, shield blocking a staff blast that would have taken his head off. We don't know how the Hulk will react to ancient technology or ascended energy. It's too dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous, Bruce replied, and began walking toward the center of the chamber. And you need someone who can disrupt Anubis while you handle the army. That's what the Hulk does, he disrupts. Dr. Banner, stand down. O'Neill ordered, but Bruce wasn't taking orders anymore. He walked directly into the firefight, staff blasts scorching the air around him, and Steve watched with horror as Bruce deliberately let his control slip. The transformation began with a roar that shook the ancient chamber, bones cracking and reforming, muscles expanding exponentially, skin shifting to that impossible green. Within seconds, the mild-mannered physicist was gone, replaced by the Hulk's massive form. Hulk smash false god. The creature bellowed, and charged directly at Anubis. The partially ascended Goa'uld turned, and for the first time, something like surprise entered his modulated voice. What are you? The Hulk's answer was a fist moving at supersonic speeds. Anubis raised a hand and unleashed energy that had destroyed planets, telekinetic force that could crush buildings, technological might stolen from the ancients. The blast hit the Hulk directly, energy meant to obliterate matter on molecular levels. The Hulk stumbled, roared, and kept coming. Impossible, Anubis said, and there was genuine shock now. You should be dead. That energy should have. The Hulk grabbed Anubis by his robes and threw him. A partially ascended being, existing between dimensions, wielding power beyond mortal comprehension, thrown like a rag doll across the chamber. Anubis hit the far wall with force that cracked ancient metal, his form flickering between corporeal and energy states as he struggled to maintain cohesion. The Hulk's gamma radiation. Carter shouted, understanding dawning. It operates on quantum frequencies similar to ascension energy. He can actually interact with Anubis's partially phased state. I love it when cosmic weirdness works in our favor. Tony yelled, taking down the last of the elevated Jaffa. Keep him busy, Hulk. We've got snake soldiers to mop up. The Jaffa, seeing their god physically manhandled by a green monster, began to falter. Some retreated. Others dropped their weapons. A few, those most devoted or most desperate, continued fighting even as their numerical advantage evaporated under the combined assault of the Avengers and SG-1. Anubis rose from the impact crater, his form stabilizing as rage overcame shock. You dare lay hands on a god? I will unmake you. I will scatter your atoms across dimensions. I will. The Hulk hit him again. And again. Each impact drove Anubis deeper into the ancient wall, each strike making his partially ascended form flicker more erratically. Your god status is revoked. Thor shouted with genuine joy, flying to join the Hulk's assault. Hulk, my friend, let us teach this false deity the price of arrogance. Mjolnir struck with lightning-backed force, the divine weapon somehow able to affect Anubis's quantum-shifted state. The combination of Hulk's gamma-infused strength and Thor's mystical power created a feedback loop that Anubis couldn't counter, two forms of cosmic energy working in concert against his stolen ascension. Impossible! Anubis screamed, and his voice was losing its modulation, becoming more human, more desperate. I am beyond you. I am. Losing, Natasha said calmly, having eliminated the last Jaffa guard. She leveled her weapon at Anubis's exposed form. And about to lose more. But Anubis was ancient, cunning, and utterly ruthless. With a gesture, he triggered a device Steve hadn't seen, a small sphere attached to the ancient containment system. The field around the Tesseract flickered, died, and the cube dropped free. If I cannot have it, Anubis snarled, his form beginning to phase entirely into energy, then none shall. He unleashed a blast of pure ascended energy directly at the Tesseract. Time seemed to slow. Steve saw Carter diving for an ancient control panel. O'Neill emptying his P-90 into Anubis's fading form. Tony's repulsors charging for a desperate interception shot. Thor and the Hulk both lunging toward the energy blast, trying to intercept with their own cosmic forces. None of them would reach it in time. The energy struck the Tesseract, and the Infinity Stone reacted. Blue light exploded through the chamber with the force of a supernova, reality itself cracking under the strain of infinite power meeting ascended force. The ancient facility's walls began to buckle, emergency systems screaming warnings in dead languages. And through the chaos, Steve heard the Tesseract, actually heard it, not through his ears but directly in his mind, calling out across dimensions, opening pathways between realities in a cascade that threatened to tear the multiverse apart. The containment field is collapsing. Carter screamed over the alarms. The Tesseract's creating dimensional rifts. If we don't stabilize it, it'll breach reality permanently. Multiple universes will start bleeding into each other. How do we stop it? Steve shouted back. We can't. Carter replied, and there was terror in her voice now. Only the ancients could build something powerful enough to contain an artifact like this, and their system just failed. We need a power source equivalent to their ZPM, Tony interrupted, his suit sensors painting the disaster in real-time analytics. Something that can generate enough energy to recreate the containment field. Which we don't have because ZPMs are basically ancient unicorns that. He stopped mid-sentence, and Steve could practically hear the gears turning in his genius brain. Oh, Tony said quietly. Oh no. Jarvis, calculate power output if I overload the arc reactor and channel it through the ancient systems. Sir, such an action would be fatal. The feedback would. Calculate it, Jarvis. A pause. Then, sufficient to recreate containment for approximately 45 seconds. Sir, I must protest. Protest logged, Tony said, and began flying toward the ancient console. Carter. I'm going to plug my arc reactor into your ancient systems. When I do, you'll have less than a minute to re-establish the containment field. Tony, no. Steve shouted, but Iron Man was already at the console, armor's hands interfacing with ancient technology in ways that should have been impossible. Cap, someone has to make the sacrifice play, Tony said, and Steve heard echoes of their first mission together, of a man learning to put team before self. That's what heroes do, right? You taught me that. There has to be another way, Steve insisted, but he knew, had known since the moment he'd crashed into the Arctic, that sometimes there wasn't another way. Sometimes the only choice was who paid the price. Tell Pepper I. Tony started, then the arc reactor began to glow with impossible brightness as he channeled its entire output into the ancient containment systems. The chamber filled with light, ancient technology roaring to life with power it hadn't felt in millions of years. The dimensional rifts began to close, reality sealing as the containment field rebuilt itself around the Tesseract. And Tony Stark's armor began to die, the arc reactor burning itself out in a final act of heroic sacrifice. 30 seconds. Carter shouted, her hands flying across controls. I almost have it. I almost got it. The containment field solidified with a sound like reality sighing in relief. The Tesseract, safely imprisoned once more, pulsed gently, almost apologetically, as its dimensional breaches sealed completely. Tony's armor went dark. Silent. The arc reactor's glow faded to nothing. Steve caught him as he fell, the armored weight nearly crushing even super-soldier strength. Tony! Tony, stay with me. The faceplate retracted, revealing Tony's face, pale, struggling to breathe, the arc reactor in his chest flickering like a dying star. Did it work? Tony gasped. Tell me it worked. It worked, Steve said, his voice breaking. You saved us. You saved reality. Tony, you. Good, Tony interrupted, managing a weak smile. That's good. Because I really don't want my last act to be a failure. Bad for the brand. Dr. Fraser would later say it was a miracle Tony survived those next minutes. The arc reactor had burned out completely, and only Bruce, transforming back from the Hulk with gamma radiation still coursing through his system. Performing emergency surgery with equipment designed for humans, not Stark's, kept him alive long enough to gate back to Earth. But in that moment, cradling his teammate while the Tesseract pulsed softly in its ancient prison, Steve Rogers learned a lesson he'd somehow missed despite decades of war. Heroes didn't just fight. Sometimes, they sacrificed. And sometimes, if you were very, very lucky, they survived to fight again. The SGC infirmary had become Tony Stark's entire world for the past 18 hours, a realm of beeping monitors, ancient medical technology hastily integrated with Earth equipment, and the constant presence of Dr. Fraser moving between patients with tireless efficiency. Steve sat in the corner, shield propped against his chair, watching his teammate sleep fitfully while machines breathed for him and kept his damaged heart beating. The arc reactor sat on a nearby table, dark and lifeless. The device that had kept shrapnel from Tony's heart for years, that had powered his armor through countless battles, had burned itself out saving reality. Now a temporary Naquadah-powered pacemaker, designed by Carter and Bruce in 6 desperate hours, kept Tony alive while they figured out how to rebuild what he destroyed. You should rest, Captain, Dr. Fraser said quietly, checking Tony's vitals with practiced precision. Mr. Stark is stable. The surgery was successful. He's going to pull through. I'll rest when he wakes up, Steve replied, not taking his eyes off Tony's pale face. I've lost too many people, document. I'm not losing him. Fraser's expression softened. You know, in another life, I think you and Colonel O'Neill would have gotten along from day one. You both carry the same weight, the responsibility of bringing your people home. Sometimes that means watching them get hurt, knowing you can't prevent it. Doesn't make it easier. No, Fraser agreed quietly. It doesn't. The door opened and Bruce entered, looking exhausted but functional, carrying data pads covered in schematics. I think I've got it, he said without preamble. Tony's arc reactor was based on a new element he synthesized, something that doesn't exist in nature. But the Naquadah has similar properties: superconductivity, massive energy density, quantum-level interactions. If we can create a hybrid design using Naquadah as the base element but incorporating Tony's miniaturization techniques, you could build a replacement reactor that works with the temporary pacemaker framework, Fraser finished, understanding immediately. Dr. Banner, that's brilliant. How long would it take to fabricate? With Carter's help and access to SGC's manufacturing facilities? 48 hours, maybe less. Tony will need to walk me through some of the finer details when he wakes up, but the fundamental design is sound. Bruce's hands shook slightly as he set down the data pads. He saved all of us. Saved multiple realities. I'm not letting him die because I couldn't reverse engineer his own technology. Steve felt something unclench in his chest, not relief, not yet, but hope. Good work, Bruce. Tony would be proud. Probably annoyed that you figured it out, but proud. He'll have plenty of time to be annoyed, Bruce said with a tired smile. I'm making sure of that. The debriefing room on level 19 was crowded with more than the usual suspects. General Hammond presided at the head of the table, flanked by O'Neill and Carter. SG-1 occupied one side, while the Avengers, minus Tony but including a heavily bandaged Hulk aftermath Bruce, filled the other. And at the far end, connected via holographic communication, sat a figure that made Thor lean forward with intense interest. The hologram showed a small gray figure with enormous dark eyes, wearing robes that suggested rank and authority. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of vast age and deeper wisdom. I am Thor, Supreme Commander of the Asgard fleet, the figure said. General Hammond has informed me of recent events, the arrival of dimensional travelers, the recovery of an artifact of immense power, and the confrontation with Anubis. I have come to discuss complications. Complications, O'Neill repeated. That's never good when the Asgard say it. Usually means something's about to explode, invade, or rewrite physics. All three, potentially, the Asgard Thor replied. His large eyes fixed on the Avengers Thor with scientific curiosity. You claim to be Thor Odinson, Prince of Asgard from an alternate dimension. Your physiology does not match any species in our database, yet you wield technology, he gestured to Mjolnir, that operates on principles consistent with ancient understanding of dimensional energy manipulation. Most fascinating. I find your form equally intriguing, Commander, Thor Odinson replied carefully. In my realm, Asgard is a golden city populated by beings like myself, warriors and scholars of considerable power and longevity. Yet here you are called Asgard and operate as protectors of humanity, despite being different. We took the name Asgard from human mythology after early contact with your species, the Asgard Thor explained. Your ancestors encountered us, interpreted our technology as magic, and incorporated us into their cultural narratives. When we later established formal contact, we maintained the name to provide continuity. An interesting parallel, in your dimension, the myths were literal truth. In ours, they were inspired by misunderstood first contact. Convergent cultural development across dimensional boundaries, Daniel said, practically vibrating with academic excitement. This is incredible. Thor. Both Thors, this suggests that certain archetypal patterns repeat across the multiverse regardless of specific physical forms. The concept of powerful protectors, the name Asgard, even the mythological framework, all arising independently in separate realities. Daniel, O'Neill warned. Focus. Commander Thor, you mentioned complications. The Asgard's expression, difficult to read on such alien features, seemed to convey concern. The Tesseract's dimensional breach was detected across multiple sensor networks. The Goa'uld System Lords know something of immense power has appeared in Apophis's territory. They are mobilizing fleets to claim it. Worse, our sensors detected Anubis's energy signature at the ancient facility. He escaped your confrontation, and he now knows the artifact's location. How bad? Hammond asked directly. Within 72 hours, P3X-797's sixth planet will be host to the largest concentration of Goa'uld forces seen in decades, Thor replied. Multiple system lords, each commanding hundreds of ships. They will fight each other for possession of the Tesseract, and the collateral damage will be catastrophic. Worse, Anubis will use the chaos to attempt another acquisition. He is uniquely dangerous, his partial ascension makes him nearly immune to conventional weapons. Nearly, Natasha said quietly. The Hulk hurt him. Thor's lightning affected him. Both cosmic-level energy sources managed to interact with his partially phased state. Which explains why he fled, the Asgard Thor said. Anubis relies on his near-invulnerability. Encountering forces that can actually harm him forced tactical retreat. But he will return with greater preparation. His knowledge of ancient technology means he may construct weapons specifically designed to counter your unique capabilities. Steve felt the familiar weight of tactical reality settling onto his shoulders. Then we can't leave the Tesseract there. If the System Lords are mobilizing, if Anubis is preparing a second attempt, we need to secure the artifact and remove it from play. How defendable is the ancient facility? Not at all, Carter said bluntly. The automated defenses were damaged during Anubis's attack. The containment system is stable now, but only because Dr. Stark's sacrifice gave us time to reboot it properly. Against a full Goa'uld assault, dozens of attacks, orbital bombardment, ground forces in the thousands. The facility will fall within hours. Then we evacuate the Tesseract, Steve said simply. We go back, we retrieve it using the containment protocols you've established, and we bring it here to Earth where it can be properly secured. And start a war, O'Neill said quietly. The moment we remove that artifact from P3X-797, every system lord who detected it will know someone else claimed it. They'll come looking. They'll trace the Stargate address. They'll find Earth. Silence fell over the briefing room as the implications sank in. We're already at war, Clint said finally. Maybe not officially, but the moment we freed those slaves on Sharon, the moment we helped Teal'c inspire Jaffa rebellion, we chose a side. The Goa'uld were always going to come for Earth eventually. This just accelerates the timeline. And gives us the Tesseract as a defensive asset, Bruce added. I know that sounds dangerous, keeping an Infinity Stone on Earth. But if the alternative is letting Anubis or another system lord get it, I'll take the risk of us having it over the certainty of them using it to enslave the galaxy. Hammond looked to the Asgard hologram. Commander Thor, your assessment. Can Earth defend itself if we trigger this confrontation prematurely? The Asgard was quiet for a long moment. The Tauri have proven remarkably resilient despite your technological limitations. You have defeated Goa'uld forces that should have overwhelmed you. You have allies, the Takar, the Free Jaffa, and yes, the Asgard fleet when we are not engaged with the replicators. With the addition of these dimensional travelers and their unique capabilities, he paused, considering. I believe you would survive. But the cost would be significant. It always is, Steve said quietly. But freedom's worth fighting for. This galaxy deserves better than slavery under false gods, and if we can help make that happen, we should. Spoken like Captain America, O'Neill said with a slight smile. Okay, here's what we do. We mount an extraction operation, SG-1, the Avengers, and whoever else wants to volunteer for probable death. We gate to the ancient facility, download the Tesseract into a portable containment unit Carter assures me she can build, and we get out before the system lords arrive with their armada. I can have the containment unit ready in 6 hours, Carter confirmed. It'll be based on ancient designs but powered by Naquadah generators. Portable, relatively stable, and theoretically capable of holding the Tesseract for transport through the gate. Theoretically, Natasha repeated. That word does not inspire confidence, Major. Welcome to the Stargate program, O'Neill said cheerfully. Where, theoretically, is the best guarantee you're going to get. I will accompany this mission, the Asgard Thor announced. The Tesseract represents technology beyond even our understanding. I would see it secured properly, and I confess scientific curiosity about meeting my dimensional counterpart in person. The more the merrier, O'Neill said. Though having two Thors on one mission is going to make radio communication interesting. I shall be Odinson for operational clarity, Thor, the Avengers Thor, offered. Commander Thor has earned his name through service to this galaxy. I am merely a visitor. A visitor who throws lightning and fights false gods, Teal'c said with something approaching a smile. Indeed, you have earned respect in your own right, Odinson. It will be an honor to fight beside you once more. The door to the briefing room opened and Tony Stark stumbled in, supported by a walking frame and looking like death warmed over but absolutely determined. His chest was wrapped in bandages, the temporary pacemaker visible as a faint glow beneath the medical dressing. Heard you were planning an op without me, Tony rasped. That's unacceptable. I'm the guy who knows the Tesseract best. You need me. Another 2 for testing and calibration. Sir, for the record, I'm stating that this is medically inadvisable and potentially dangerous. So noted, Doctor, Hammond replied. And for the record, I agree with you. But we need every advantage we can get, and Dr. Stark represents a significant advantage. He turned to Tony. You'll have your new reactor. Try not to blow it up in the first 5 minutes of the mission. I'll give it at least 10, Tony promised. Mission departs in 12 hours, Hammond announced. SG-1, Avengers, and Commander Thor's personal presence via Asgard transport. Objective, secure the Tesseract and return it to Earth before the System Lords arrive. Secondary objective, try not to start Armageddon. Questions? Clint raised a hand. Define, try not to start Armageddon. Because our track record on that is, mixed. Do your best, Agent Barton, Hammond said dryly. Dismissed. Get some rest, people. Tomorrow we're either saving the galaxy or dooming it. Possibly both. As the room cleared, Steve found himself walking beside the Asgard hologram, beside the actual Commander Thor, who'd apparently transported directly to the briefing room while Steve was distracted by Tony's dramatic entrance. Captain Rogers, the Asgard said, his large eyes meeting Steve's with unsettling directness. You lead these dimensional travelers with skill and courage. But I must ask. What will you do when you recover your Tesseract? Will you seek to return to your dimension, leaving this galaxy to its fate? Or will you stay and continue fighting a war that is not yours? Steve had been avoiding that question since they'd arrived. Now, faced with the Asgard's direct inquiry, he had to confront it. I don't know, he admitted honestly. In my world, I woke up 70 years out of my time, in a future I didn't recognize, fighting battles I never anticipated. I learned to adapt, to find new purpose, to keep fighting because people needed someone to stand up for them. Here, it's the same thing. Different galaxy, different enemies, but the same fundamental fight, freedom versus tyranny, hope versus despair. And if you could return home but it meant abandoning this fight? Steve was quiet, thinking of his team, his world, the life he'd built in the 21st century. Then he thought of Shayla and the other freed slaves, of Teal'c's rebellion against false gods, of billions still enslaved across thousands of worlds. I'd make sure this galaxy had the tools and allies to keep fighting, Steve said finally. I'd do everything I could to give you the best chance to win. But ultimately, I can't abandon my own world. My own people. That's the burden of leadership. Sometimes there are no good choices, only the choice you can live with. The Asgard nodded slowly. An honest answer. I respect that, Captain Rogers. Know that should you choose to return to your dimension, the Asgard will remember what you and your team did here. The Avengers will be honored in our historical records as warriors who fought for a galaxy not their own. We're not gone yet, Steve replied. First we have to survive tomorrow. Indeed, Commander Thor said, and Steve could swear there was a hint of amusement in the alien's voice. Your teammate Teal'c uses that word frequently. It seems appropriate to our current situation. We face impossible odds, uncertain outcomes, and the very real possibility of catastrophic failure. Indeed, tomorrow will be interesting. 12 hours later, Steve stood in the gate room one more time, watching chevrons lock with mechanical precision. Tony stood beside him in rebuilt armor, the new Naquadah reactor glowing steady and strong in his chest, Jarvis running constant diagnostics to ensure stability. Bruce carried equipment for emergency medical support, hoping he wouldn't need to become the Hulk but ready if circumstances demanded it. Natasha and Clint had augmented their loadouts with Goa'uld weapons and ancient technology, becoming hybrid warriors of two galaxies. Thor, Odinson, held Mjolnir with eager anticipation, ready to face false gods one more time. SG-1 stood ready at the gate. O'Neill with his P-90 and irreverent confidence, Carter with her scientific equipment and tactical mind, Daniel with translation devices and cultural knowledge, Teal'c with staff weapon and unshakable resolve. And materializing via Asgard transport beam, Commander Thor appeared in physical form, small, gray, utterly alien, but radiating authority earned through millennia of service. The Asgard fleet stands ready to provide support if needed, Commander Thor announced. Though we are engaged with replicator threats on multiple fronts, I have diverted 3 ships to this system. Should the situation deteriorate beyond your ability to extract, we will intervene. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, O'Neill said. Everybody clear on the mission? We gate in, we download the Tesseract into Carter's magic box, we gate out. Fast, clean, no heroics. You're talking to the Avengers, Tony said cheerfully, his armor's systems reading optimal across all boards. Heroics are literally in our job description. Then try for controlled heroics, O'Neill amended. The kind where everybody comes home alive. No promises, Steve said, but we'll do our best. The event horizon stabilized, shimmering blue and infinite. SG-1, Avengers, Hammond's voice came through the speakers, you are go for mission. Bring back that artifact, bring back my people, and try not to break too many ancient relics. Good luck. Steve took a breath, felt the familiar pre-mission clarity settle over him, and addressed his combined team one final time. 2 galaxies, 1 mission. We go through that gate together, we fight together, we come home together. No one gets left behind. No one fights alone. Avengers, SG-1, let's show the universe what Earth can do. They stepped through the Stargate, reality dissolving around them. And on the 6th planet of the P3X-797 system, in an ancient facility millions of years old, the Tesseract waited. The final battle for the Infinity Stone had begun. The ancient facility's warning klaxons were already screaming when they materialized through the gate. Steve's combat instincts kicked in immediately, those weren't automated alarms. Those were proximity alerts, the kind that meant someone else had arrived first. We've got company. Carter shouted over the noise, her scanner painting hostile contacts across the holographic display. Multiple Hatak signatures in orbit, death gliders on approach, and, oh no, those are Alkesh bombers. They're preparing for orbital bombardment. How long? O'Neill demanded, weapon up and scanning for immediate threats. Minutes, maybe less. Sir, we need to grab the Tesseract and go now. The facility shook as the first orbital strike hit somewhere above them, ancient architecture groaning under weapons fire it was never designed to withstand. The lights flickered, emergency power routing through systems that hadn't been tested in millennia. Teal'c, Odinson, Barton, external defense. Steve ordered, slipping into Captain America command mode as naturally as breathing. Keep those gliders off us long enough for Carter to work. Tony, Bruce, you're with the Major. Get that containment unit operational. Natasha, O'Neill, Daniel, we secure the perimeter. Move. They scattered with the practiced efficiency of warriors who trusted each other implicitly, each moving to their assigned role without hesitation. Steve reached the facility's main entrance just as the first wave of Jaffa came through, their staff weapons blazing in the confined space. His shield sang as it deflected energy blasts, the vibranium disc moving with precision born from decades of combat. He threw it in a perfect arc, hitting 3 Jaffa in sequence before it ricocheted back to his arm, and followed up with a diving roll that brought him into close quarters where their long weapons became a liability. A Jaffa warrior swung his staff like a club. Steve blocked with his shield, redirected the momentum, and used the man's own force to send him crashing into his companions. Another came from the side. Steve ducked under the staff blast, swept the Jaffa's legs, and shield bashed him unconscious in a single fluid motion. I count 20 hostiles in the courtyard. Natasha's voice came through his calm despite the gunfire in the background. Correction, 15. Clint's working. Outside, on the frozen landing platform, Hawkeye had found elevated position and was systematically dismantling the Jaffa assault with surgical precision. Each arrow found its mark, throat gaps in armor, weak points in helmets, the vulnerable spots every warrior has no matter how well protected. 3 Jaffa fell in as many seconds, their companions scrambling for cover that didn't exist against an archer of Clint's caliber. Death gliders incoming. Clint called out. I'm good with ground targets, but I can't shoot down aircraft with arrows. I've got them. Thor, Odinson, roared with savage joy, spinning Mjolnir until it became a blur of lightning and divine fury. He released the hammer and it shot skyward like a guided missile, trailing electrical discharge that turned the frozen atmosphere into a storm of his own making. The first death glider exploded in mid-air, Mjolnir punching through its shields and hull with contemptuous ease. The second tried to evade, banking hard, but Thor recalled his hammer and sent it streaking after the fleeing craft. The glider died in a fireball that painted the alien sky orange. I like this, Odinson. Commander Thor's voice came through everyone's comms, the Asgard apparently integrated into their communications network. His approach to air defense is refreshingly direct. Inside the containment chamber, Carter worked with frantic precision while Tony and Bruce provided technical support and defensive fire. The Tesseract floated in its ancient prison, pulsing with barely contained power, while Carter assembled the portable containment unit that would, theoretically, allow them to move it safely. The power couplings aren't matching ancient specifications. Carter said, frustration creeping into her voice. The Naquadah generators are compatible but the quantum resonance is off by 0.3%. If I activate this with current settings, the feedback could destabilize the Tesseract and create another dimensional breach, Tony finished, his armor's sensors running real-time analysis. Jarvis, cross-reference ancient power modulation frequencies with Tesseract quantum signature. Find the harmonic that'll let us bridge the gap. Analyzing, sir. I believe I have a solution, but it will require manual calibration. The tolerances are extremely precise. Then I'll be extremely precise, Tony said, his armored hands moving with the steady control of someone who'd built arc reactors in caves with boxes of scraps. Carter, talk me through the ancient interface protocols. Crystal Matrix accepts input through resonance feedback, Carter explained rapidly, her hands working in parallel with Tony's. You need to match the frequency exactly or the whole system rejects the connection. Too high and you get cascade failure, too low and you get nothing. Perfect, Tony muttered. No pressure. Just calibrating alien technology to contain a cosmic artifact while a building falls down around us. Tuesday. Another orbital strike hit, closer this time. The containment chamber's ceiling cracked, ancient metal screaming under stress it was never meant to endure. Dust and debris rained down, and Bruce flinched as a chunk of structure missed his head by inches. "We're running out of time," Bruce shouted. "If this facility collapses while the Tesseract is still in open containment, it'll be bad," Tony interrupted. "I know. Working on it. Jarvis, boost the resonance frequency by 0.03% and, there. Carter, try it now." Carter activated the portable unit and everyone held their breath. The ancient technology and Naquata generators hummed in harmony, frequencies aligning in perfect synchronization. The containment field around the Tesseract flickered, shifted, and began to transfer to the portable unit. "It's working," Carter breathed. "Power transfer stable, quantum resonance holding, containment integrity at 94%. Dr. Stark, you did it." "Don't congratulate me until we're home," Tony replied, but Steve could hear the relief in his voice. "How long to complete the transfer?" 2 minutes for full download, then we can disconnect the Tesseract from the ancient systems." "We don't have 2 minutes. Daniel's voice came through the comm, tight with urgency. "Jack, we've got incoming on the ground." "Those aren't Jaffa formations. That's Takar crystalline architecture. The resistance is here." Outside, Teal'c cargo ships were landing with the distinctive ring transporter shimmer, and warriors in Takar armor materialized with weapons drawn, not attacking, but forming defensive perimeters with tactical efficiency that spoke of centuries of guerrilla warfare. And leading them, a figure Steve recognized from Carter's descriptions. Jacob Carter, her father, his eyes glowing briefly with the presence of his Takar symbiote Selmak. SG-1. Jacob's voice carried across the chaos of combat. "Stand down. We're not here to fight you. Jacob." O'Neill lowered his weapon fractionally, confusion evident. "What the hell are you doing here? This is about to become ground zero for a System Lord free-for-all." "Exactly why we're here," Jacob replied, moving toward them with Takar warriors providing covering fire against the continuing Jaffa assault. Selmak detected the Tesseract's energy signature. "We know what you're trying to do, extract it before Anubis returns. The Takar High Council sent us to assist. Consider it payment for years of alliance and the 42 souls you freed from Sharon. Your timing is impeccable." Teal'c called out, his staff weapon cutting down 2 Jaffa who'd gotten too close. "Indeed, we need all the warriors we can muster." "And warriors you shall have," another voice boomed across the battlefield, deep, commanding, carrying the authority of a leader who'd earned absolute loyalty. Through the combat strode Bratak, Master Jaffa warrior and Teal'c's mentor, leading a force of free Jaffa rebels in armor stripped of Goa'uld symbols and marked instead with the symbol of freedom. The old warrior moved with the deadly grace of someone who'd spent 130 years perfecting the art of war, his staff weapon an extension of his will. "My student," Bratak called to Teal'c. "When we heard the Sholvier and the Tauri were defying the System Lords once more, how could we not join the battle? This is a fight worthy of songs." Teal'c's expression, usually stoic and controlled, broke into something approaching joy. "Master Bratak, you honor me with your presence." "The honor is mine, Teal'c," Bratak replied, then his eyes found Thor Odinson, who stood surrounded by the wreckage of death gliders, Mjolnir crackling with residual lightning. "And who is this? Surely not a Goa'uld, yet he commands power like unto the gods themselves." "I am Thor, Prince of Asgard," Odinson declared, and his voice rang with genuine respect for a fellow warrior. "And you are Bratak, master of the Jaffa and teacher of rebellion. Your student speaks of you with great reverence." "Then we are well met," Bratak said with fierce approval. "Come, let us show these false gods what true warriors can achieve." The tide of battle shifted with the arrival of Takar and free Jaffa reinforcements. What had been a desperate defense became a coordinated military operation, Takar intelligence providing real-time updates on orbital positions, free Jaffa warriors engaging ground forces with the tactical superiority of those who'd spent lifetimes learning Goa'uld weaknesses, and the Avengers and SG-1 holding the center while Carter completed the extraction. Steve found himself fighting back-to-back with Jacob Carter, the older man's combat style showing decades of Air Force training mixed with Takar enhanced reflexes. "Sam talks about you," Jacob said between bursts of weapons fire. "Says you're from another dimension. That true?" "Yes sir," Steve confirmed, shield deflecting a staff blast. "Fell through the Stargate during a battle in New York. Been trying to find our way home ever since. And in the meantime, you freed slaves, defied Anubis, and nearly died saving reality." Jacob's eyes glowed briefly as Selmac's presence came forward. "We have seen many warriors in our 2,000 years, Captain Rogers. Few have impressed us as quickly as you and your team. You fight not for glory or power, but for what is right. That is rare in this galaxy." "It's rare in any galaxy," Steve replied. "But it's worth fighting for anyway. Containment transfer complete." Carter's voice cut through the combat. "We have the Tesseract." "Repeat, we have the artifact." "Then it's time to leave," O'Neill shouted. "Everybody back to the gate. Fighting retreat, standard extraction. Move, move, move." But as they began to fall back toward the Stargate, the sky above the ancient facility darkened. Not with clouds, but with the massive bulk of a Hawkeye mothership dropping out of orbit with impossible speed, its hull glowing with barely contained power that spoke of technology beyond standard Goa'uld engineering. "That's not a normal Hawkeye," Carter said, horror creeping into her voice. "That power signature, that hull configuration, that's Anubis's flagship. He's here." The ship's ring transporter activated, and a figure materialized on the facility's highest point, Anubis in all his terrible glory, his partially ascended form flickering between corporeal and energy states, his mask glowing with malevolent red light. "Did you think I would allow you to escape with my prize?" Anubis's voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified by technology and divine power. "I have learned from our last encounter, Captain Rogers. I have prepared countermeasures for your gamma-powered monster, your lightning-wielding god, your iron-suited genius. You cannot defeat me. You cannot even harm me. Surrender the Tesseract, or watch this entire facility become your tomb. Been threatened by better villains." Tony shouted back, his armor's weapon systems targeting Anubis. "Jarvis, what are our odds?" "Negligible, sir. Anubis's partially ascended state makes him effectively invulnerable to conventional weapons, and his flagship's shields are operating at 200% of standard Goa'uld capacity. I calculate a 97% probability of mission failure if we engage directly." "Never tell me the odds," Tony muttered. "Cap, what's the play?" Steve's mind raced through tactical options, each one worse than the last. They couldn't fight Anubis directly. He'd proven nearly invulnerable. They couldn't outrun his flagship. They couldn't gate out while he held orbital superiority. But they had one advantage Anubis didn't expect. They had allies willing to make sacrifices. "Commander Thor," Steve spoke into his comm, addressing the Asgard. "You said you had 3 ships in the system. How fast can they get here?" "They are already in position, Captain Rogers," the Asgard replied. "I anticipated this possibility. On your command, they will engage Anubis's flagship and provide cover for your extraction." 3 Asgard vessels against Anubis's enhanced mothership, O'Neill said grimly. "That's not good odds for them." "No," Commander Thor agreed quietly. "It is not. But the Asgard have always known that some battles require sacrifice. We will buy you the time you need. Make it count." "Asgard fleet," Steve said, and his voice carried the weight of command given to those about to risk everything, "engage the enemy. We'll get the Tesseract to safety. You have my word." Your word is sufficient, Captain Rogers, Commander Thor replied. Asgard Fleet, attack pattern Delta 7. For Earth, and for freedom. 3 Asgard vessels materialized from hyperspace, their sleek gray hulls a stark contrast to Anubis's massive pyramid ship. They were smaller, faster, and hopelessly outnumbered, but they opened fire with the concentrated fury of a race that had been fighting impossible odds for millennia. Anubis's flagship rocked under the assault, shields flaring as Asgard weapons tore into them with surgical precision. The half-ascended Goa'uld's attention shifted from the ground forces to the aerial threat, his flagship returning fire with devastating power. Go! Steve shouted. Everyone to the gate. Now! They ran as reality burned around them. Asgard ships dogfighting with Anubis's flagship in orbital combat that turned the sky into a light show of impossible energies, free Jaffa and Takar warriors providing covering fire, the ancient facility collapsing under the strain of forces it was never meant to withstand. Carter reached the DHD first, her hands flying across the symbols as she dialed Earth. The Stargate activated, the event horizon exploding outward in its familiar kawoosh, and the iris code transmitted automatically. Bratak. Jacob. Fall back. O'Neill ordered. We're leaving. No. Bratak's voice was firm. The Jaffa will hold this position. We will ensure the System Lords do not follow. Go, and know that free Jaffa died so that freedom might live. The Takar stand with our Jaffa brothers, Jacob added, and Steve heard Sam's father making peace with his own mortality. Sam, tell your friends I'm proud to have fought beside them. Dad! Carter screamed, but Jacob was already turning back to the fight, Takar and Jaffa forming a desperate rearguard. Steve grabbed Carter, physically hauling her toward the gate. We honor their sacrifice by completing the mission. Move, Major. Natasha and Clint went through first, followed by Daniel carrying the portable containment unit with the Tesseract pulsing inside. Bruce dove through next, then Teal'c, then O'Neill providing covering fire until the last possible second. Tony's sensors detected the incoming orbital strike before anyone else. Cap. Incoming. Get to the gate. Steve turned and saw it, Anubis's flagship charging its main weapon, enough power to glass the entire facility and everyone in it. Thor Odinson stood at the gate's threshold, Mjolnir raised, lightning gathering in impossible concentrations. I will hold them, the god declared. Go, Captain. I will follow. Thor. But the god was already unleashing divine fury, lightning striking upward toward Anubis's ship with force that made the atmosphere scream. The blast bought them seconds, maybe less, and Steve used them. He threw himself and Carter through the event horizon just as Anubis's weapon fired. Reality dissolved, reformed, and Steve materialized in the SGC gate room, stumbling on the ramp as Carter collapsed beside him, sobbing. The others were there. His team, SG-1-1, the Tesseract secured in its portable prison. But the event horizon still shimmered, and Thor Odinson hadn't come through. Close the iris, someone shouted, but Steve was already moving back toward the gate. Thor, he screamed. Thor, get through the gate. For a terrible moment, there was nothing. Then, with a sound like thunder given form, Thor Odinson burst through the event horizon, Mjolnir smoking in his hand, his armor scorched and cracked, but alive. The wormhole collapsed. The iris sealed. And silence fell over the gate room. Mission accomplished, O'Neill said quietly, and Steve heard everything the colonel wasn't saying, the cost, the loss, the victory that felt like defeat. Carter was on her knees, tears streaming down her face. Her father was still out there, holding the line with Bratak and the Free Jaffa, buying time with their lives. Steve knelt beside her, shield clanging against the metal floor. He didn't have words. What could you say to someone who just lost a parent to war? So he just stayed there, a presence and a promise that she wasn't alone. Hammond's voice came through the speakers, heavy with the weight of command. Medical teams to the gate room. Science team secure the artifact. And someone get me a status report on the Asgard fleet. Commander Thor's hologram materialized, and even through the alien features, Steve could read the grief. My ships engaged Anubis's flagship as ordered, the Asgard said quietly. They inflicted significant damage and forced his retreat from the system. Captain Rogers, Commander Thor said, and there was something in his voice now, respect, recognition, perhaps even friendship. Your presence in our galaxy has been brief but impactful. You have inspired rebellions, defied system lords, and proven that courage and honor transcend dimensional boundaries. When you return to your reality, and you will, know that the Asgard will remember the Avengers. We will remember that Earth, in all its forms, produces warriors worthy of the stars. Tony limped forward, his new reactor glowing steadily through scorched armor. Commander, we didn't just inspire rebellions. We've got an Infinity Stone now. The Tesseract. And I've been thinking, maybe we don't go home just yet. Maybe we stay and help you finish this fight. Tony, Steve started. No, hear me out, Tony interrupted. We came here by accident, yeah. But we've seen what's at stake. Billions of people enslaved. False gods with advanced technology committing atrocities. And we have the power to help, actual cosmic power, sitting in Carter's magic box. We could use it. We could help the Takar, the Jaffa, the Asgard. We could end the Goa'uld threat permanently. Or we could destroy the galaxy trying, Natasha said quietly. Tony, the Tesseract is an Infinity Stone. Using it always comes with a price. You know that. The price of not using it might be higher, Tony countered. Bruce stepped forward, his medical knowledge making his voice carry weight. Tony's reactor is stable, but it's untested long-term. We don't know if it'll last weeks or years. Steve's serum works here, but we don't know if extended exposure to this dimension will affect its stability. Thor is separated from Asgard, from his father, from his home. Clint and Natasha are cut off from S.H.I.E.L.D., from the networks that make them effective. We're running on borrowed time and borrowed technology. We need to go home. But not yet, Clint said, surprising everyone. Look, Bruce is right about the long-term problems. But short-term? We just helped start a war. The System Lords know something powerful appeared in their territory. Anubis knows it was taken to Earth. The Goa'uld are coming, whether we stay or go. We can't just hand these people an Infinity Stone, pat them on the back, and hope for the best. So what do you propose? Hammond asked. Steve stood, feeling the weight of command settle onto his shoulders one more time. We stay until the immediate threat is resolved. We help Earth defend itself against whatever response the Goa'uld mount. We train SG teams in new tactics, integrate our technology where it helps, and make sure this planet can survive what's coming. Then we find a way home, taking the Tesseract with us because it's too dangerous to leave in any reality. He looked around at his team, seeing agreement in Natasha's eyes, determination in Clint's, scientific curiosity warring with caution in Bruce's, and absolute conviction in Tony's. General Hammond, Steve said formally, the Avengers volunteer to remain attached to the Stargate program for the duration of the current crisis. We'll follow your orders, operate under SGC authority, and do whatever it takes to give this Earth the best chance to survive. In exchange, you give us access to your best minds and resources to help us find a way back to our dimension when the time comes. Hammond studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Captain Rogers, consider your offer accepted. Welcome to the Stargate program, Avengers. Try not to blow up too many planets. No promises, Tony said with a weak smile. In the medical bay, Dr. Fraser worked tirelessly on the wounded while the Tesseract sat in triple containment, pulsing gently with infinite power. On P3X-797's sixth planet, Jacob Carter and Bratak led the survivors in a fighting retreat, buying time measured in lives and sacrifice. In orbit, Asgard vessels mourned their fallen and prepared for the war that was surely coming. And across the galaxy, System Lords plotted and schemed, knowing that Earth had claimed something of terrible power. But in the SGC briefing room, two teams from two galaxies became one force united by common purpose. The Avengers had found a new war to fight, and the Stargate program had gained allies who understood that some battles required heroes willing to stand against impossible odds. Steve stood at the window overlooking the gate room, watching the Stargate, silent now, but still connecting Earth to infinite possibilities, and thought about choices and consequences. They'd come here by accident. They'd fought for freedom by choice. And now they would stay until the job was done, because that's what heroes did. Somewhere in the multiverse, their Earth still needed them. But here, in this reality, another Earth needed them more. The war for the galaxy continued. But now it had Earth's mightiest heroes fighting on the front lines. And the Goa'uld were about to learn what Captain America, Iron Man, and their team could accomplish when they fought for something bigger than themselves. The Tesseract pulsed with quiet power in its ancient containment chamber, dimensional energies held in check by technology millions of years old and stark ingenuity measured in hours. It waited patiently, as infinity stones do, for the moment when its power would be needed. To defend Earth from System Lord armadas, to open the way home, or perhaps to rewrite the rules of a galaxy grown complacent in its tyranny. In the weeks that followed, Earth changed. The Avengers integrated with SG teams, teaching tactics and learning gate protocols. Tony and Carter revolutionized Naquadah applications. Bruce discovered that gamma radiation could detect Goa'uld symbiotes with perfect accuracy. Thor Odinson became a symbol to the free Jaffa. Proof that true gods served rather than enslaved. Natasha's intelligence networks found Takar spies, and Clint trained SG marksmen in precision that saved lives. Steve Rogers, out of time in two realities, found purpose in defending a world that wasn't his but desperately needed heroes. The Goa'uld came, as everyone knew they would. But they found Earth defended by more than determination and stolen technology. They found the Avengers, SG-1, and the combined might of alliances forged in combat and sacrifice. Some battles were won. Others were lost. Heroes fell, and new ones rose. The Tesseract remained secure, its power a promise and a temptation that Earth refused to abuse. And through it all, the Stargate stood, ancient, patient, connecting world to world, reality to reality, possibility to purpose. It had brought strangers to this galaxy. It would, someday, allow them to return home. But until that day, Captain America's shield would defend the gate. Iron Man's technology would level the playing field. Thor's lightning would remind false gods what true divinity looked like. And the Hulk's rage would protect the innocent from those who would enslave them. Two Earths, separated by dimensional barriers but united in purpose. The Avengers had assembled in a galaxy far from home, and they would not stand down until freedom rang across every world connected by the Stargate network. The mission continued. The war endured. And heroes, whether born in Brooklyn or Teal'c, crafted in caves or ascended to godhood, stood together against the darkness. Indeed, more stories awaited. More gates to travel. More worlds to liberate. But for now, Earth stood defended. The Tesseract stood secured. And the multiverse stood witness to what happened when Earth's mightiest heroes joined the galaxy's longest war. The Avengers had entered the Stargate Universe. And the galaxy would never be the same. Indeed. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories.